So I tell you, quick little story is Tuesdays are my long days. I think Ryan mentioned that it's a long day for you as well. I think probably a lot of you. Do you guys? How many of you work during the day? Okay, and then you come here. I remember that. It makes for a long day, huh? So yeah, it's kind of a long day for me as well. And I always think to myself, I got to get fired up for class. Got to have some energy. Got to bring some enthusiasm. And then when I get close to class, I think how lucky. Quite honestly, I think how lucky I am to be here teaching you guys. So I do get fired up, but it's really easy. I love coming to this class, and I'm glad to see y'all. So with that, my undergrads kind of, I don't know, one of my undergrads kind of busted me out and said, hey, Ron, how come you don't call everybody by their name? I go, well, I've got about 65 students between my two classes, and I'm horrible with names. I know that's no excuse, but I guess where I'm going with this, I'm vowing to be better. So what I'm doing with my undergrad class, I'm going to do the same with you, so I can get better with your names, is I'm making me a little seating chart. You know, a lot of my colleagues do the name tags, which is fine, and I don't want to put that down, but I just feel like we're in second grade when we do that. I appreciate Ryan doing it, and then I have to nag you to put your name tag up, and for some reason I don't do that. So I want to be an adult and try to actually learn your name. So before we get started, just give me a couple minutes here. I got Ryan, which?
Afton, A-F-T-O-N.
I got Rudy. David. And Nathan, you're just here for vacation.
Typically my name will be at the
Mario,
bottom of the
I can't forget you.
Coulter.
Colton?
Coulter.
Oh, Coulter.
Vikas.
Vikas. Could you spell that for me?
Sure, it's V-I-K-A-S.
Oh, just like it sounds.
Wrong?
Ah, there it is, right there. You get your little name tag. Gopal, that's right. Katie. And
Aziz, A-Z-I-Z.
Like the famous comedian, right?
So that's good. You know, as long as you guys don't come in and switch chairs, I'll be fine. No, we'll be good. I'll get better at that. That's what I told my undergrad. I go, well, I can't promise you I'll know everybody's name by the end of the semester, but I'll do better. So I resolved to do that. Let's see, my remote students. I hope you're all watching these videos. I realize that there's really no mechanism to force you to watch these videos if you're not watching. Hello?
Hey, it's Erica.
Hello. Hi, Erica.
And yes, I do watch the video.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is the asynchronous students that, watch it time delayed. You can do your assignments without watching the videos. I hope I'm bringing enough value that you're all watching your videos. But again, I feel bad that I'm not bringing you into the classroom more. And I may solicit your input on ways we can do better with that. But I started 2 weeks ago, and I skipped a week. But I'd like to call out a few names. Erica, as I see already, and Reinhold and Patrick, welcome from Team 4. So if you guys are watching this, I don't know, maybe tomorrow, welcome. All right, let's get going. I got a ton of slides. More likely, especially with this class, I may not get through them all. I always have this dilemma of whether I should delete these slides, but I leave them in because even if I don't talk about them, I'll put them out on D2L for your when I took these classes, I think I told you, I kept all the slides. In fact, from this class, I kept all my slides from, 6 years ago. So I advise you paid for those. If you feel like there's valuable content there, to save them. All right, so the main topic tonight is leaders as learners. That was part of your reading. I hope you enjoyed the reading. So that's what we'll be talking about today. We'll do our normal daily stoic. We'll go to the reading. I'm not going to read all these, but the new ones will be victim mindset. We'll talk about that. If you haven't, been exposed to that, that's kind of interesting. learning why it's important, and then a few small videos that I have of other voices, of other people that talk about the importance of learning, so you can get a little different view other than my own. I know mine is pretty amazing, but other ones are good too. All right, any questions before we get started? I mean, also, is there anything pressing that you guys want to talk about with the reading? I know we're going to talk about it, but any pressing questions, any problems? You got your first report coming up. Oh, that's a good point. I don't know if I have a rubric printed out. I think somebody asked me about a rubric. I don't think I have one out there, but I will get one out there so that you know exactly what I'll be looking for on your paper. As far as the length, I think the length is all spelled out. We got that clear, right?
Yeah.
In the syllabus. So any other questions on that as we get close to, I think March 7th is the due date? Did you have something? No? Okay. All right, our stoic reading. All right, you've probably seen a theme with stoicism, and this one kind of goes along with that theme again. So protect your peace of mind. Keep constant guard over your perceptions, for it is no small thing you are protecting, but your respect, trustworthiness, and steadiness. Peace of mind, freedom from pain and fear, in a word, your freedom. For what else would you sell these things? What is Epictetus talking about here? Other than the obvious. I mean, the obvious, I think it's obvious, right? I think the compelling one is, what's that last sentence mean? For what else would you sell these things? What's he trying? What's the point he's trying to make? I'm going to assume the rest of it makes sense.
You wouldn't sell that. You wouldn't sell those things for anything.
Yeah.
Makes you.
What's that?
It's what makes you. Makes how you interpret the world, not
Sure.
sell those things is to change who you are too.
Yeah, but I guess I latch on to, why is he talking about selling? Is he truly talking about selling these things? Do we actually sell these things?
Well, I mean, we sell ourselves out to kind of that contentious job, the hateful boss, the, what have you, the personal relationships that drain us.
Sure. Everybody agree with that? Yeah. I mean, when you I use an example of, what if your boss comes to you, maybe your boss came to you this morning and said, you know what, there's something I really need to talk to you about that I need, I don't know, maybe he says something along the lines of, I wasn't happy with the design work you did on that last project. Can you stop by my office tomorrow so we can talk about it? What are you going to do for the next 24 hours?
Freak out.
Yeah, you're going to freak out. You're going to have anxiety. You're going to have fear. Your imagination's going to go crazy, right? You're going to ruminate on that until that meeting happens. And I think what Epictetus is saying here is, really, is there anything we can do about it? No. It'll be interesting when we have the meeting, find out what it's all about. But I think, at least that's what I'm getting from this, is he's saying, don't worry about things that are out of your control, right? Maintain your peace of mind, maintain your tranquility. I know it's not easy. It sounds simple, but it's not easy, right? So you guys agree with that? Is that valuable? Again, I think in theory it's easy. In real life, much harder. But I would say practice. Work at it. I think we would all agree this is a good thing. Unnecessary anxiety. Does anybody want that?
Well, I mean, in a way, most all of us do it one time or another on a big scale with like home mortgages. I mean, mortgage means till death. So
it's just one example. I mean, there's so many examples that we do that with.
I mean, it's just the consumer mindset that we have.
Yes.
It ties us down in every aspect. We're selling our freedom.
Yes.
Being able to do what we want to do when we want to do it.
Yes, totally agree. The more debt you have, the more you're enslaved to that debt. Simple, but powerful, in my opinion. Hope you guys like that. All right. from the reading, let's pull some thoughts from our online students. All right, leadership challenge. I strongly agree with the importance of recognizing contributions as recommended in Chapter 10. In order for recognition to not be forgotten or discounted, it must be personalized and expressed from the heart, in quotes, because that came right out of the book. I would think you agree with that, right? I mean, what's the worst thing? I mean, praise, are we all in agreement that praise is a good thing? Studies will tell you that leaders giving their team praise is one of the biggest things they can do. It doesn't cost you any money. It just costs you a little effort as a leader to do it. And most leaders fall down miserably on this, in my opinion, and even from my experience. But it's only, no praise. I would say that kind of canned praise that doesn't feel authentic is almost worse.
Yeah, the paper certificate that you file away or throw away.
Well, that too. And so how can we do better with that? Do you understand what I'm saying? What's a canned praise?
A little goes a long way.
What's that?
A little goes a long way. I mean,
yeah,
the fact that
okay.
you pick somebody out and you say something specific and specifically to them. And I mean, it doesn't have to be any grand gesture or anything, but the fact that you took the time, you realized the importance that they stood out, and you thanked them.
Yes.
Thank you, you did a good job.
There's two things there. Number one, you talked about being specific. I like that. But pointing out, hey, you did a good job. How's that feel? You did a good job. Hey, Rudy, you did a good job in that meeting.
Well, on what?
Yeah, exactly.
Specifically.
It's not horrible to say that, I don't think, but you can do so much better. That's generic. Hey, you did a good job. I could say that to anybody that does anything, right?
But I said that to my 4-year-old.
Yeah? You shouldn't do that. Be more specific.
I know.
Nathan?
So one of the things that my company implemented was kind of a peer-to-peer feedback system for, hey, when you recognize one of your coworkers did something really great,
sure.
Send it into HR and say, I really like what, Stephen did on this project. It was really big help. It was great. He helped me get up to speed. And then they'll randomly pick those to send in like a morning update that says, hey, this was feedback from Nathan to Stephen. This is what he, thought, and they'll pick those randomly. If it doesn't actually get broadcast to the company, they still kind of forward that and say, hey, Stephen, Nathan was really excited with, he already knew that because I was like, hey, you really helped me get up to speed on this, and we work, we have a really good working relationship. But then when, he saw that more officially, he was
And you said this is fairly new? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
How do you think it's working so far?
I think it's working well for the people that are using it.
Yeah.
But I really don't feel like that many people are using it because it's a company of a lot of very highly educated, very technical engineers, and that personalized feedback becomes touchy-feely.
Yes. The reason I asked, we had a similar thing at my company, and it was catch somebody doing something good. And basically, it's the same idea, except they didn't put it into an email or something like that, but they would get a gift card, like an $80 gift card. It wasn't, chump change. So it was a nice little thing to do. We found I don't know if it was because of the engineering mentality, but most people weren't using it. And they would have to, kind of prod us, hey, you guys forget that we have this. Use it. And I don't know what it is. Anybody got thoughts on why? Why an engineer, except for the touchy-feely part? Are we just not equipped well to do that?
I don't think it's just engineers. It's a lot of companies. It's just one more thing people feel they have to do.
Yeah, but that's a nice thing, right?
But I think it's like if you have it as kind of a systematized type of thing, it creates kind of a can approach too.
Exactly.
I mean, what I like when someone does is where they've actually spent time. They're specific about the situation, and they actually understand what kind of resonates with the person that they're actually giving the praise to.
That's a good one. I've heard of some managers that will, nothing special except for a handwritten note. Leave it on your desk. you did something, and they're very specific in their little handwritten note of why they want to thank you, and you come in the morning and you have a handwritten note from your boss.
That's the
Pretty cool gesture.
That's the bigger part, the thank you versus good job. People respond a lot more to thank you than they do just to the generic good job.
Yeah, that's a good point. Why is that, you think? Or do you agree with Ryan? Is thank you better than good job?
Yes.
Why?
Because first, the good job is too generic. Thank you. You have to say why. What are you thanking the people for?
Yeah, maybe.
Thank you for
I guess.
What?
Thank you for doing a good job.
Yes.
Good point.
Yeah. Well, but I think when you think there is more of a personal relationship manifested in there. A good job.
Yeah.
Is hierarchical in the sense that you don't necessarily expect it from a peer. A good job. You will expect a thank you from a peer more than a good job. At least that's what happens in work.
Going back to what you said, maybe you had me at thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You lost me at good job.
Yeah, but
I don't know. I'm having a dilemma with that. What would I rather hear? Would I rather hear good job or thank you?
Well, I feel like the good
Or does it
job thing
matter?
is kind of like everybody should be doing it.
Well, and that's kind of where I was
to remain
thinking is.
gainfully employed. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you're doing your job.
And that's kind of what I was going to
Is
say
it
about
okay?
engineers is I know a lot of managers don't want to give praise because they look at it as you're just doing what I hired you to do.
Great job.
This is
or
what
like
I paid you to
amazing
do.
job. You knocked it
Why
out
do I
of the
need to
park.
say thank you or why do I need to say good job? That is a lot of the mentality of, I know engineering managers, probably a lot of managers in general. Is that warranted? I mean, you're just doing what I pay you to do, right? Unless you're going above and beyond. I mean, that could be a different thing, I guess. And maybe that's what we should be talking about, right? If you're just doing an average job, I don't know. And that leads me into the next thing. Be authentic about it and don't do it just because, hey, they're just being mediocre and you're going to go say, hey, great job. Don't do that. You got to actually earn that, right? Anyway, I kind of cut you off. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say I think appreciation is a big thing, and that's where thank you comes in, rather than just like, hey, nice job on this, like we were just talking about what you were supposed to do. But whereas thank you is more of like, I appreciate what you're doing and like thank you for bringing that to the group.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think in both cases it definitely depends on what follows the thank you or good job.
Yeah, I was going to say. So, hey, Ryan, great job. I appreciate the way you presented those slides, on the design review. I can tell you put a lot of thought into that. What's wrong with that?
That's okay. Bob actually put most of them together. So.
Well, hey, there you go. As a good leader, we deflect praise to somebody else. But I mean, I said great job or good job, whatever you want to use. I don't know. Is that bad? I was going to say, I don't know. I see both sides of it, but I think both of them, if said properly, are good.
Yes.
And again, it's going back to, are we showing genuine, authentic appreciation? That is, I think, the underlying principle.
Yeah, do you say thank you while rolling your eyes? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of different ways you could do it. Thank you. Outstanding, as usual. See you at lunch. Right.
If you go above and beyond what your job would ask you to do, then thank you is more relevant. But if you're just doing what you're supposed to do and you do a good job, maybe a little differently or more efficiently, then it would warrant a good job.
Okay. I might buy that.
Well, and tagging on to that one, so I had a situation the other day where we sell and support software. I don't. I'm a services engineer, but part of one of the big things we do is tech support. Somebody calls in, they have a problem, and actually, I took one of these cases and went through the WebEx and walked somebody through the software, and it wasn't actually my manager who noticed it. It's actually one of the people at the company that I would consider a mentor, somebody that I really look up to. He's really highly educated. The guy's like genius. And we finished the case, and he came by. He was on the WebEx, and he came by. He's like, you did a really, you did a really great job. Like, thanks, you did. But it wasn't anything more specific than what we were just kind of frowning upon, like, great job. But that coming from a mentor on something that's not necessarily something that's my job was like, and I was like euphoric after that.
So what you're saying is it depends on who it's coming from?
It depends on who it comes from, and if it's a peer who's kind of a mentor that you look up to, that meant a lot.
So if your manager said that, would it have made?
I think if my manager would have said it, it wouldn't have. It would not have given me the warm fuzzies that it did.
Why?
Just because this was one of the people who I probably look up to.
I know, but why would the comment from your manager not hold as much weight? Can you put your finger on that?
Maybe because it would be more expected.
It might be that, or it was
maybe a little more forced. You feel like they.
Yeah, it was it might have been that, or it would have been like, hey, like, you went out of your way to do that, good job. But that coming from the person that I really look up to, is even more of a mentor than my direct manager. It it sent me over the moon, and it was just something that simple. It was like I was like leaving the office, and he was like, "Hey, you did a really great job on that WebEx."
That's a good lesson. Look at how much weight that
right.
A little bit of praise.
I was ready to skip out to the car.
You had a big S on your chest.
Yeah.
Throw open the cape. Go ahead.
There are a lot of things that go into when a manager says thank you to you. First of all, you need to believe that it's genuine. It depends on your perception of it. Second of all is the body language that communicates those words at that moment. If he's making eye contact and you can see the genuineness about it, but if he's just looking at somewhere else and kind of throwing those words in there, it loses, its meaning. So there's a lot of other factors that go in with those words.
Totally agree.
So he has got to engage in a conversation and kind of be very genuine about why he's saying that thank you to you. For me personally, I don't think a one-liner would suffice. I wouldn't take it that he's genuine. He's being genuine.
Well, I don't know if and you can correct me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, but I don't think we dismiss it, but we would probably not give it a lot of weight, right? And you didn't put a lot of thought into it. I'm not going to put a lot of thought into receiving it. It's kind of like that. I totally agree. Being genuine, being authentic. I also think you need to make sure that you're doing it when people earn it. Don't just dole them out. Make it something. Here's the thing: we got to walk that fine line of not doing it too much, that it waters it down. I mean, we're doing it all the time. I don't know if I'm hearing that from my manager every day. I might start rolling my eyes. So we got to be careful that we're somewhere on that spectrum in between of never doing it and doing it all the time, and just be authentic. The way you deliver it is a big deal. But I've been around leaders that do it well, and oh my goodness, it really boosts the morale of not only the person but the team sees that. A lot of times that rubs off on other team members. If I see my leader giving good, authentic praise to somebody that did a good job in the hallway, you think that might boost my morale? Yeah. I like to see that in my leader.
I think your manager has to be a leader, someone you can look up to or respect. I think respect is the biggest thing. I feel like if I didn't respect my manager, then his good job wouldn't really mean much to me. I feel like whether it was thank you or good job, it doesn't really matter. It's two words. But if I respect him and I look up to him in some way, then it means the world, and I'm gonna be motivated to keep doing well. I feel like your leader has to actually be, or your manager has to be a leader for it to mean anything.
I totally agree, and I laugh because if you don't respect your leader, probably nothing they're going to do is going to be really holding much water with you, right? Especially if you have really low respect. I would say, and I don't want to tell you how to live your life, but maybe you're looking for a different job or a different department. If you have a leader like that and you don't think that, you don't respect them, that's tough. That's a tough working environment to be motivated and engaged. So totally agree with you on that. we got to be careful with that. Parham, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to get everyone's take on, people say that when you're praising someone, praise them in public, and when you're reprimanding someone, reprimand them in private. I just want to know how it works. Like, I would rather have my boss call me on a one-on-one and praise me, if he's going to praise me directly, not necessarily in front of someone else. But they say it does make a difference. I just want to know if...
So what's your question exactly? So you think that's a good way to do it?
Yeah, like what is your take on it? Do you think, would you rather appreciate your boss calling you one-on-one and praising you, or would you rather have him praise you in a meeting in front of others?
What do you guys think?
It goes to knowing your people. And
yeah, I was going to say, I think some people get uncomfortable with any kind of praise. There might be some, so my question would be, it depends. It depends on the person. I think some people, they just do not, for some reason, like to be praised for, it makes them, for some reason, it makes them uncomfortable. And I would say you need to go see your therapist.
Yeah, highly
figure
depends.
out why that is.
I think it highly depends on that dynamic.
I shouldn't say that. That's kind of unfair. But
I think it depends on the win also. I mean, people, it could be an internal win. Somebody's having a really hard time at their personal life. Maybe there's something going on there, and your manager sees that they're working through it. They did a good job. It's like, hey, I see you stepping up, and that might be a personal, private win.
Oh, yeah. So there's something going on in their personal life.
Correct, and you see that.
That's always a different discussion. There are plenty of people with good reason that just don't want their private life, broadcast to their team within reason, right? And so if I share something with my leader, my manager, of what's going on in my personal life, that doesn't mean I want them to tell the whole team. So I get that. That's a little different context, but yeah, I get that. Nathan?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the team dynamic as well, because as the receiver of that, it might make you feel one way.
Yeah, exactly.
But depending on the rest of the people on the team, if you get praised and they're like why is he getting praised?
Yeah, someone gets left out.
And somebody else they get left out, or...
Yeah, oh goodness. If you jump into that whole, that bucket of jealousy, we could be here for hours. Go see your therapist. Figure out why you're having that jealousy would be my answer.
I feel like jealousy motivates. I feel like you're like, okay, he got praise in front of everyone. When's mine? When do I get mine?
Well, maybe it can, right? Maybe it can. I don't know. Me personally, my personality, I wouldn't think of it that way. I just like to see my leader treating people well. That's all there is to it. Whether I'm on the receiving end of it or not, I don't know. I don't look at it as, okay, I'm next. I can't wait till I'm next. I don't know. That's just me, but.
Do it in person, too. You're co-located with the people. The worst is like if they send a text or they send an IM and they're like several offices down. You're like, really?
Yeah. I mean, it really goes into how much effort they put into it, right? If they're trying to shortcut like that, or they're not putting a lot of thought into delivering it with, authenticity, well, it's not gonna hold much weight with you, right? So absolutely, do it face to face, be authentic, get eye contact, all of those good things that we do as leaders.
Put your phone down.
Yeah, put your phone down. Hey, by the way, Ryan, you did a great job. I got to get this text. Thanks. Yeah. What's that? That's not it. I think we get it. We laugh because hopefully we would never do that, right? All right, good. So I don't know if that answered your question, Parham. I think it depends on the person. I think most people probably like to be praised in public, and if you're gonna get some criticism, I always say criticism needs to be behind closed doors. That's my opinion. Not every manager agrees with that, and I would scold them. They're just bullying, in my opinion, if they're doing that. They think that they have that authority to bully you, and I don't buy into that.
What about coaching up? Kind of like your student earlier.
Always coach up. We'll talk about coaching, but gosh, yes.
But when you coach up, it might have a little more impact if you coach up in public. Sometimes
you got to be careful.
You have to be tact about it.
Coaching up is going to be walking that line of constructive criticism.
Yeah, that boss.
I don't know. In most instances, I don't know that I want to be that happening in front of the team. But you're right. I have seen people deliver it quite well, and if you're very good at it, maybe you could get away with that.
Come across as dissension too.
What do you mean?
Like if someone is, coaching up to their boss, it can come across as being critical in front of the group, and you can really set yourself up to be on a blacklist if you do it wrong.
What are you talking about, brown nosing?
No. When you're basically, calling out the boss for doing something incorrect.
I didn't take that. Is that what you meant?
No, well,
when you meant coaching
it can definitely be taken that way. Though.
I was talking about as a leader, I'm going to coach you.
I was more like your student earlier. He probably said in class, why don't you call us out by names? You probably had more of, hey, that's probably a good idea. It wasn't anything bad that that student was asking to do, but it probably had a little bit more merit that he brought it up in front of the whole class.
Well, he didn't bring it. He actually sent me an email. And then I emailed him back, and I said, I appreciate your, I appreciate your feedback. Thank you. I want to use this as a case study in class. Do you mind? And he said, no, absolutely. And we kept him anonymous throughout the conference. We spoke for about 15 minutes on the lessons that you can learn from that. And I thought about doing it with you guys as well, but I feel like you guys are more advanced that you can probably go, I get it. But it was a great, real life leadership in action. The way he delivered it, the way I responded to it, and then the little things, the little nuggets that we can learn from that. Because I go, that is exactly the kind of things you'll get in the real world. What we're doing here, this is easy. When you get out in the real world, you go, hey, wait a minute, Ron didn't teach me this, or he taught me little pieces of this, but not exactly like this. How do I manage that?
He told me this, and I got fired.
Yeah. So sometimes you got to think on your feet. Sometimes you got to experiment, see what works. That's part of being a leader. And my TA said, she sent it to me, and she goes, I've never seen anything like this. And I said, I haven't either. This is a new one for me. He was kind of upset that I wasn't calling everybody out by name. And namely, I wasn't calling him by name.
You should call him by the wrong name, do the Starbucks thing with him, where they write the wrong name on the cup.
No, but it went well. So, I don't know where we got off on that. But let's move on. Good discussion. But feedback's a big deal. We're going to talk more about feedback later in the semester. Let's see. More intriguing topics covered in Chapter 9 is captured Figure 9.1 on 257. I never thought about the relationship between a person's skill level and the difficulty of a challenge relating to how a person feels trying to accomplish that challenge. The concept of flow is achieved when a person is faced with a tough challenge that they are highly skilled in. How many people, I think I asked you this already, how many people were aware of the term flow before you read the book? Good. I'm fascinated by this topic, and I just can't understand why it's not more prevalent, quite honestly. The main book by Csikszentmihalyi came out in 1990, and here we are, almost 30 years later, and it's still really not that well known. Only about a third of you had heard of it. So anyway, it's a fascinating thing. I'm going to do more lecture time on that, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it tonight. If you're not familiar with flow, and I think you probably got a pretty good idea what it's about in the book, but it's just that time when you've got enough challenge to keep you, in the zone, so you actually lose track of time. You don't have that self-critic talking in your mind all the time. This usually comes from the left side of the brain, which we're really good at left side thinking as engineers, so we have that inner critic a lot. But when you get into flow, that inner critic either shuts down completely or goes very quiet. It is a great state to be in. I think probably most of you have done something where you've been in a state of flow. I'm getting to the point where I try to create it on a daily basis, where I'm like, okay, let me see if I can get into flow for 30 minutes or 60 minutes. They say, 90 minutes is kind of a max for most people, even when you get fairly developed at it, to stay in flow for about 90 minutes. So it's not easy to do. It takes a lot of concentration. But it's a fascinating topic, and again, we'll talk about that in a little bit in a couple slides. And then expect to hear more about it later, because it is one of my favorite topics. All right. Now, to coaching. I think many leaders don't coach their subordinates because they are expected to be qualified to perform at a certain level when they are hired. I feel some companies probably see employee growth as a personal preference instead of an organizational necessity. First of all, do you guys agree with this? Is this pretty prevalent in real life in corporations that you've worked for?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is coaching is that a metric they measure their leaders on, their managers? Most companies? Do you know if any of your current managers get measured on that? Probably not.
So.
What's that?
I don't believe so, because
Yeah.
I haven't noticed a lot of coaching going on.
So I think we're all in agreement that this is kind of the way it goes. This statement right here is kind of the way it works for most companies. Should we worry about it? If this is your company, you're the CEO or you're the founder, and you're operating like this, should that bother you?
Absolutely.
Why?
You're never going to grow as a company. I see it as treading water if nobody ever grows. You're not growing your leaders to stagnant company is one that's going to be doomed at some point.
All right. So we can only, we're just maintaining, our output or our efficiency, whatever word or metric you want to use. If we're just maintaining, at some point, that's going to not be good enough. That's kind of what you're saying. Okay?
When we've compared
Sorry,
companies...
Mario.
Oh, my bad.
Oh, go ahead, man.
You guys are right there. And
I can't tell.
I pointed to Nathan. It was my fault. Sorry. We'll get to you, Mario.
So we've compared other companies to Google, and how Google, I believe it's in this class. Everything kind of blurs together. But Google sees like the bottom 10% or whatever.
Yes, I brought that up.
Pulls them up.
Yes.
And, fights for that growth for those employees instead of going,
Yeah.
Don't
The
need
Jack
that.
Welch way is cut
Keep
the
the
bottom
provisions.
10% every year. Okay. Mario, my apologies.
Oh, it's no problem. So I think a lot of leaders don't train their people because they're scared they might take their jobs too.
Oh.
I really do. I've actually come across that recently, where one of my employees thought I was trying to take his job when I told him, "Look, I'm only taking this job for a while until I finish my degree." But,
What do you think of that? Is that legitimate?
yeah,
That does
it's
happen.
legitimate.
It does happen.
It does happen.
Self-preservation.
What's that?
Self-preservation.
Yeah.
I think the goal should be
Scarcity
that-
mindset?
Yeah, or they get snatched by another company.
Well,
So if we train them, they take them.
I think I may have mentioned this earlier. I've known or I've heard stories of managers that will actually, in some ways, sabotage their star team members to keep them kind of in check. Nathan, have you seen that?
Well, so it's one of the quotes that I've actually used before in trying to enact, programs or tuition reimbursement for some things. But there's the mindset from an executive, what if we invest in our employees and they leave?
Yeah.
What
That's
if
a
you
good
don't
quote,
invest
yeah.
in your employees and they stay?
Yeah. I like that quote.
Then you have employees that aren't advancing, they're not continuing to do better and better, and they stay. But if you invest in your employees and they grow, you can, a side effect of that can be, loyalty to the company. Like, they've helped me do all of this.
Yeah. So how do we get around that? I mean, I think that's a pretty legitimate concern, right? Or at least we think it is from human nature that if you're doing too well, you might take my job. So how can we spin that? And I don't know who had their. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah. They make us sign contracts that if they pay for education, you have to stay with the company for a couple of years.
If what now?
If they pay for education.
Yeah. Yeah, my last company paid for my master's degree, and there was no ties. There was absolutely nothing that tied me to them. And I know some companies will say, X amount of years, you got to stay.
They'll do a clawback.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that completely addresses if I have somebody on my team that I want to, hey, that person's really talented, and if I help them too much, they may take my job. How can we get around that? I mean, here's an example. Danielle might be watching this. I know Danielle watches some of these, my TA. Danielle, so far, has been very impressive to me, grading your papers and everything she's done. And I know she has aspirations to do what I'm doing someday. Should I stifle that, or should I help her in any way I can?
Fire her.
Danielle, he was just joking.
There's always a little bit of truth in every joke, Danielle.
I mean, seriously.
You have to up your game. As a leader, you have to up your game.
Well, I would say,
Catalyst for everybody to get better.
Yeah.
So I can speak from my personal experience with just managing, large groups and folks over the years now. For me, how I kind of mark kind of success with my teams is that if I can be gone for a week or 2 weeks and can come back and the person that's backing me up goes, wow, I didn't have any escalations, everything was smooth. Because I want to make sure that the people that report into me are able to handle their business and what they're doing on, a day-to-day basis, a weekly basis, without needing my constant guidance and oversight.
Absolutely. And that's just one aspect of it. I mean, you should be looking at it even more grand than that as a good leader. What if you leave the company? We talked about the level 5 leader. They were setting their companies up for success after they were gone, not just on a vacation, but actually, I'm going to leave the company, and I want you guys to be in such good shape that you don't miss a beat once I'm gone. And I'll call out Dr. Moore. I just had a meeting with Dr. Moore recently, and we were talking about the fact that, retirement's on his radar. He doesn't have a date set, but his words to me was, I want to make sure the program's on very sound footing before I leave, so that you guys will have continued success when I leave. And on his desk is good to great. So good to great is where level 5 leadership comes from, and Dr. Moore certainly embodies that. So yeah, I totally agree with you, and I would say take it one step further, that we certainly want that high performing team to be able to really to do our job, right? And I saw quite a few hands. I don't know who was first. After Mario called me out, I'm nervous now. Make sure I get people in order.
I definitely feel that being a manager or a leader has a certain parental characteristic to it, where you want to see your employees under you be, or should be, more successful than you are. And if you have that mindset, you would do everything possible within your means to make that happen. Just like a parent would like their children to be more successful than they are, and they derive happiness out of that. But if you see them as competition, obviously, then, all bets are off at that point, right?
Yeah, and I wish there was more leaders that had that mentality. Great insight. I would call that servant leadership. In a nutshell, too many leaders don't embody that, in my opinion. They do look at it as that scarcity mindset of, you're going to take my job.
Insecurity is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think in some sense it does. But yeah, the perfect team for me is if all my team members go on to, there was some book I read, and I can't remember if it was Good to Great. I apologize that I don't remember the reference, but it was somebody that had an executive team of like 4 or 5 people, and they all went on to be CEOs of other companies at some point later in their careers. To me, that's the perfect team. You have done your job if all of your team members go on to great things. That's like, wow. Talk about, some great leadership. So I think that's what we'd be shooting for, right? And if that threatens your confidence, that threatens your identity. I don't know what it might threaten. Your manliness, your womanliness. I don't know what it is, but go see your therapist. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like, if in a company, if you're a manager and all of your subordinates are growing and flourishing and doing amazing compared to other managers and their subordinates, you should also end up seeing, recognition of some sort for that, because clearly you're doing something right in terms of leadership.
Here's the thing. I think most companies fail miserably at having leadership metrics in place for their managers. So where are we going to see this show up, though? If I have a highly functioning team, let's say because of all the little things I do with my team functions at a higher level than all the other teams. Where do you think that's going to show up? It will eventually show up in the bottom line. And then, the CEO is going to notice. But up till then, there's no real metric to drive that. There should be evaluation of managers of how are you doing in leadership? How are you setting your team up for success? In my opinion, that's one thing that's very wrong with the way we evaluate managers. It's all management. I mean, what leadership metrics do we have? It's almost all management metrics that we use to evaluate our managers. So there's a good chance if you become leaders, managers, you're going to have to. That's not what it's going to have to drive you. The metrics of being evaluated that way is not going to be the thing that drives you. It should be your values as a leader. These should be things that are important to you. To me, leading a team that respects me, trusts me, all those things that I'd like, that's how I want to be as a leader. So that's what's going to drive me. It's not going to be my boss evaluating me. And then hopefully it will show up in the bottom line, and I'll get, or my team will get some kind of recognition for that. But really, I think that's where it should come from. But you're going to have to take time. You're going to have to carve time out to be a coach. And I agree that we should be coaching. And I know some people have the mentality of, I'm not here to babysit you. You're a big boy or a big girl. I don't need to hold your hand, blah, blah, blah. That's bunk, in my opinion. A good coach is worth its weight in gold. And if you have a leader that can coach you, everybody on the team is going to rise. Everybody's going to get better. And what else? Morale is going to be high. Motivation is going to be high. Engagement is going to be high. Are these all good things for me as a leader? Does this make my life easier if all those things are high in my team? You bet it does. So put in the extra effort, your life will be better. That would be my advice. Any other comments? Oh.
I really loved the multipliers versus diminishers references in there. And I don't necessarily think it's a binary scale, but I think that it's definitely interesting and something to strive for, like very simply put in words. I thought that was really neat.
That's a great tie into the reading. You want to be a multiplier, right? And there's too many managers that are diminishers. And I think a lot of them don't realize that they are being a diminisher, but they are. So, multiply. Be a multiplier.
Also, we read about how promote people based on their potential rather than what they know and what their experience is. So you can probably tie that into this as well and say people generally get promoted because their bosses think they don't have to be guided too much, and they don't end up promoting people who have too much potential doing that particular job.
Yeah, and I just seen a headline recently that corporations management in most corporations do a poor job of evaluating potential. So there's a hole there. There's, as I like to say, if there's a hole, what's another word for that?
Opportunity.
Opportunity. If you ever hear, if you hear that there's a crisis, think opportunity. Somebody needs to plug that hole. All right, let's move on. I love the discussions. All right. And I can't remember, this is the article about ADT, if you remember ADT, Attention Deficit Trait, which I thought was pretty fascinating the first time I read it. And really, this kind of ties in a little bit to our last lecture, talking about focus. And I'm not going to read all of it, you can read it. And I may have brought this up, that sometimes a break helps thoughts come to us. Research backs this up. This isn't me giving you touchy-feely stuff. There's actually, cognitive science behind this. But yeah, just remember that when you're doing something. Most of my career was as a design engineer, and coming up with ideas sometimes it was tough. And yeah, sometimes you need to let off the gas, get away from it all, go for a walk. If you can, go for a walk in nature. We'll talk more about that later, but actually that gets you into you get your brain in, I want to say alpha waves, gets out of beta waves, and it's basically a more, tranquil setting for your brain, I guess would be a best way to put it. And then things start coming out. So just remember that. I think that's a big tip. And obviously, I can't remember who wrote this, but one of your classmates agrees that this has worked for him or her. Thoughts on that? Comments? Good. Mario.
I like that. It's like when I have homework assignments and they're pretty tough. For a few hours, when I come back, it just comes to me for whatever reason.
Yeah. I think it's very key to totally detach from it. You've got to let the stress, let the anxiety, let it all go, and do something that takes your mind completely off it. Don't even think about it. And a lot of times it will just pop into your head. You know, some people talked about driving home to work, you know, after a hard day or something. Sometimes that'll do it. So, yeah, unplug. And the whole thing about ADT is pretty fascinating to me. That I think that our culture now kind of breeds this. And we talked quite a bit about that last class. So, all right, let's move on. Leadership groups. These were some of them that I pulled out of what you were supposed to be taking notes on when you were doing your reading. So break into your leadership groups and discuss these or anything else that kind of resonated with you that you want to talk about. This will just get you started. You can talk about these if you want, but I'm open to whatever about the reading. Quite honestly, I told you over and over again that I wasn't real sure about this book. This is one of the best leadership books as far as a good foundation for leadership that I've come across. I'm thrilled that this will be my book from now on because I've cycled through a few of them. So I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. It really touches on a lot of things that I think are very crucial to leadership. So there should be plenty to talk about, in my opinion. If you love leadership like I do, plenty to talk about. All right? So I don't know, 15 minutes? We'll talk about that, and then we'll talk a little bit about flow after that. So everybody watching, about 15 minutes. Studio, if there's anybody online that would like to be in a Zoom group, could you put them into a Zoom group so they can chat? Thank you.
So how have you guys been doing leadership groups? You just...
Yeah. It could all just be one group.
You're
in the middle of the dance circle right now, so...
yeah, I'm going to move out.
Person.
Nathan, are you talking about an online experience?
You say Aziz Light?
What's that?
You say Aziz Light?
No, I said Aziz is a great one.
Oh, okay.
It's the beginning of
or something.
Fifth Element.
And yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You're like, that's me.
It can't be that.
Aziz Light is also to me.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Me and Eric.
Yeah.
And so we got through the questions pretty quick, and then I was like, oh, that's a cute dog.
Nathan, you should have kept talking about other things.
The first question was flow, like how does your boss or your manager's create flow for you?
So, a flowy trail.
Oh, yeah.
It's distracting you.
Get into stuff.
But actually, one of the offices we have,
I think that for me, at least, that's like
kind of offices. That's one way. The distraction is very less.
Mountain bike, you kind of just know it.
Driver.
Easy, it's effortless, and it's just you're at a higher plane.
Get it when I ski the
I think it's a hard combination.
Yeah, that would be a similar type of thing.
Yeah, you think too hard.
You don't even see the trees anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I read a great book about extreme athletes.
Which is great for a lot of things, but
your
it's
life's in
hard to
danger,
really
the more
trigger even like
easier it is to
10
get
to
into flow.
12 to 15
Extreme
minutes
athletes
of
get
that,
into flow
or just,
almost
like,
every time they
being
do
able to sit at your
something
desk
because their
by
life
yourself
depends on
and,
it. So yeah, those two
get
things.
into that. So
I can
so
see that. I mean,
we're
mountain biking, you kill yourself.
balance at this
But another thing that flow comes out in a lot is video games. They do a lot of studies on people that get into video games. You ever play video games for like 6 hours and go, where'd the time go?
Did you hear that guy that guy at 35 that just died over the weekend?
No.
24-hour world of tanks. He was like just doing it, and he did it for 24 hours.
What the hell happened to him?
They don't know yet. But he has 3 kids and everything.
And rather set a time and say,
he was just.
how about you come in my office?
And he usually videotapes himself playing, and they said that he was like in the zone.
Get into my work,
another term for flow.
Running up and down to his cabin and attending to his questions and
it can be addictive.
There's similarities between the two. The hormones that we release in our brains, it's just like it's basically a drug cocktail. And when I do the lecture, I'll kind of go through it. There's about 4 or 5 drugs or hormones that are being released into our system. Absolutely, flow is like somewhere to be on drugs.
Are open range or more agile these days.
Like the runner's high too that people get when they're for really long
breaking
time.
through the wall.
Yeah.
That second personalities that they have.
The only time that flow has been
all right, I need to be on your case a little bit more.
negative for me is whenever
a little bit less on
climbing,
you.
I'll get into a flow state, but I will forget to stop and clip the rope into the bolt. And so, like, I'll start.
Right, I don't even know.
Yeah, and then start. And so my belayer will like yell at me like, "You missed a clip." And I'm like, because it's like I just
stop by. And I think that's interesting too because a lot of
that's interesting.
I mean, I'm
from
glad
the
they
hours
do.
of scheduled
I mean, it's
meetings
what I
and
want.
but that's also
Like,
creating
so
the
much
problems
into
with
it that
these like sporadic check-ins at times that aren't consistent.
One method for musicians, playing musicians, that's also part of it, but there is a method to how to get there. And one of the things that
Learning about it.
with an instrument is that we take our musical ideas and we train the heck out of those individual ideas, and then we
know about that. So waterfall is like
flow is interrupted when you're going from one idea to the other, and you haven't trained that.
Agile is completely opposite. So you work two
It's-
at a time. So you have a project or a task.
It is a part of what may have happened to you. There is that slip and the transition that is not part of the training.
Right.
And or the mountain climb, a goat just appears and you haven't trained for that, and
in the right direction, you can
that interrupted your flow.
But agile also involves like you meet every morning and talk about what you did.
He's on that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's on sound, and that's the great how they can be, half an hour with one song. That
work as a team
state because the way to do it is
like 2 weeks.
what is called a groove. It's the same thing.
What I found
It's a Wooten quote, and it's, don't lose the groove in order to find a note.
working 2 weeks.
That is correct, yeah.
Is
So you have to actually be able to predict.
just,
Doing all the stuff is just
and even if there are small things that aren't quite 100%, don't,
able to add more about
you know,
agile.
keep the groove.
I think that, work, how much you can get done if you could actually
Are
get
these like
running into
that you
distractions.
personally work on? And like is your company like kind of trying to switch over or like?
We switched over like a few years
They're going
back,
down
but
really well, and then
still like
something that seems their responsibility
I always
on track.
find myself being in flow much more in the waterfall because
They put it in the
that
rabbit
dedicated time on a problem.
hours,
Rather just
or that they're
spending a few minutes
derailed
on it.
for half an hour, an hour.
Switch back to some of the tasks.
Don't you feel like
Well, that's where that
if there's
ADT
lesser
stuff
time to
comes
do a
in.
task,
Today I was
you're
sitting
more
behind
likely to
my
get it
coworker
flow
and we were
and,
going over
like,
one of
get
the
job done, or
projects.
do you feel like
And
if there's more time to get
every
the job done,
Depends on how challenging
the
it is.
little
right?
black box
I'm like goofing
corner
around.
of the second monitor, there was an email that came in. Just go, click on the email, and
I
pull
think
the
that
email
very
up.
much
and I was
depends
like,
on your
Steven.
personality, learning style, and like.
I just read about this. We got to pay attention.
Right, like if you're the type of person who does their work best in a stressed environment, then the waterfall
their email notifications.
you. So I feel like as a company, it's
Their,
hard to
Outlook or whatever.
like step back and
They tell everybody.
how we're gonna do
I
it.
check my email in the
Yeah,
morning
that's
when I
tough.
first get in. Check
For
it
me,
at
I think
lunch,
it's all about
check it before I
distractions.
go
If you
home.
can knock off the
If
distractions
you
like
need me
emails,
that bad,
instant
call me
messaging,
or come down to the office.
meetings, and a whole bunch of
just
other
having those
stuff
little
that kind of
oops,
consumes pretty
Sometimes
much half your day.
it's not even,
If
you're
you can
just
take that
copying.
off, then we can focus a lot
Pop in
more
and
on the task at
meeting.
hand.
I turn my
I think
monitors
it's
off.
all about
When I visit my
efficiency.
office, I'll turn my monitors off.
Right, and half of it is self-done.
That was one of the things that I
You're browsing
answered
on
for
the
this one was
internet,
when I'm
doing something
virtual.
else that you shouldn't be doing, I guess.
monitors. And typically I have my
the focus,
Google
right?
document to
So
take
for me, I
notes
think
of
to kind of
on
address
my
that
second
question,
monitor.
how do you address
But then there's
it?
always the little
I'd say
up and it's
there's a
like,
lot of
oh,
companies
you got an email
they give you all the
And it's like,
facilities in terms of communications tools and all that. But I feel that
so
it's
one of the things I
being
said was, okay, I
exploited
could try
on
to
a
take
personal
handwritten
level
notes and
where
just
you're
shut off
browsing,
that
doing
second
something else.
monitor.
and
Highly
throw my
recommend it.
phone, take the internet connection
out of the
off.
room.
For most of the
If
jobs
you really
that we do, like
need, feel like you need
services,
to digitize that, take a picture of it.
you don't need an
Handwritten
internet
notes.
connection. You have your tools on site.
Yeah, I just
Have
like.
a central
I think
location
there's more
for
connection
people to go
with writing with a
research
pen
and
and
do
paper.
stuff like that. Like if you're,
Yeah,
you're
there's
on a
studies
break,
back
you
that
go
up.
do
I
something
think
15,
even
20
that
minutes, come back
over
and then
writing
you're
on like
up
a
again,
tablet.
right? But having it right on your computer, I think, is a big distraction.
I think that's really interesting, though, because I mean, in
Turn the
our
pen
class
around,
last
erase
semester,
it,
we were talking about like
make additional
Isn't that
notes.
same as like writing on a tablet though?
and like it would stress me out
Got a
so
different
much if I
visual
couldn't
effect with
have like
perspective. This is black
email
and
or
white.
instant
It's black and white.
Yeah, I'm old school. I still like the pen and paper. I
contact
like the
someone if I
technology.
needed
but,
them. So like
and
I
I'm
think
trying to
that's
unplug from all.
fascinating.
I was about to call you
I
an
used to take notes, but I don't anymore. I love it. I really have gotten to the point where I love writing.
No, but no, that's
Portable
a really good
laptop for
point.
freshman
We can
year.
just kind of get over it, honestly. Like, I
Or it
mean,
was one
once
of
you
the
have like
gateway
a
ones
like a
that,
central,
had the
like a
pen,
central
I
spot
use
where
it
you can do
probably
all your
2
research.
lectures.
Honestly,
I got a bunch of the quad rule
a lot more work done.
comp books. And
All I
you
get is,
just
I mean, then I just get to use my 4G until I use it up. Then I start having to pay more, and then I stop.
And then when you
using my
finish
4G.
one, I use them at work.
You know, it's kind of
Like undergrad, I always had to take myself to the library because I knew if I went to the library, I was there for 3 hours, and it's like, you know what? I can't do anything else.
That's what I did.
And let's be honest, part of the reason I think I've really gravitated toward that is
exactly
because I just can't trust myself to not look at those notifications.
Right?
If I have a computer open, I'm trying to take notes on it, and that stuff
One more
pops
thing
up,
to add
I
to
don't
that
have enough willpower
distraction
to
thing.
not go over and look.
The other thing that companies
So
are
yeah, I just
doing these
completely get
days,
away
I mean,
from it. You don't want to eat cookies in your
engineering,
house? Don't buy
software
cookies.
engineering, all the electrical engineers, all of us have moved into
Simple,
combined
but
cubes now. We used to have
that's kind of what I'm doing.
They just open it up. It's like one chunk of
I don't
getting
want any
pretty much everything, right?
I hope you guys do well, but I don't
One thing
want
they've added is they've changed the desk
our
structure.
department,
If you wanted to, you could get a
assistant
standing
had
desk.
some in
now.
her office today, and I go, I've gotten to the point where I
When
just
you're
go up and I give them
standing,
$5 and go,
supposedly,
you keep your cookies, here's some money. It's a good cause, but I don't
I
want
mean,
you
I
to.
haven't used it yet. I mean, my cube mates,
I buy the Thin
a
Mints
few
by
of them
the
have it.
case.
If you're standing,
Yeah, but then you
focus
buy
on
the
your
freezer
browser,
and
then I was like,
and
can I
you
get
don't
2
browse. You don't.
boxes?
I mean, when you're
Like,
slouching,
yeah,
is
that's
when you go
$9
browse
and
stuff,
stuff.
right?
Yeah.
When you're comfortable.
So when you're standing, you're actually
So like
focused
that's
on
like
the job and you
$100.
get it done. very
Yeah, I
quickly.
know.
Thinking on your feet, I don't know if that's
Who's gonna eat
the
all
right
those?
term here, but
Cookies.
phrase,
I
but
put them all
supposedly
out.
that helps. I'd like to see
Until
more
it
experience.
That's a very good point. So I have a stand desk at work and at home.
Very good.
Used by a year from now?
Yeah, I keep them all in the freezer,
You're right that when you're standing, you tend to focus more.
but I haven't bought any this year.
Nice.
Likely to stop by and start.
So what do you guys, any thoughts on
Okay,
cognitive
Okay.
It's kind of a fascinating thing, in my opinion.
So just quickly,
Because most
so
people
the,
aren't even aware of
aerospace
our biases.
department, so I'm a PhD student here, first
You're
year,
biased by
and the aerospace engineering
Yeah, I mean, really,
moving,
we are
down to
creatures
East
of
Campus
bias. I mean, that's
within, they say by they're starting building
we all have
this
it. But
spring,
again,
and they say we're
I think
moving
half
in
the
summer
battle
of
is just knowing what they
2018.
are,
Which is like
being
insane.
aware of
So
it.
like I'll still be here,
People don't want to
but
admit the
they're
biases
basically
they
like
have.
trying to solicit input from
Well, one good example for
on like
bias,
how
I had
they
a,
want
it might have been one of my professors
desk
in this
situation to be.
program. And I can't
Basically, what
remember
they've
who it
come up
was.
with is this like
But they
thing where
had
every
relayed
single
a
PhD
story
student
about
is like on the same
hiring
level
manager
and like
that took
in
resumes and had his
like,
assistant fold over the
basically
name
organized based on
resume
their advisor.
before he looked
So
at
like
them.
from my
So that he
perspective, I
wouldn't
feel like I
have
could get a lot
a
more done if I was like in an
bias
office by
toward
myself
the
or
name.
with a couple other people. But like
Even
overall,
though he,
like the
there's probably somebody that
overarching
says, I don't have that. You'd be
desire of
surprised.
the PhD students is to just like be in.
So just
one
be
level.
aware
So I think it's fascinating.
that it's
So maybe
there,
that's just,
it's
like,
lurking.
Yeah, I
It
have
can
no idea.
affect your
I was like,
decisions.
what students are you soliciting as input from? But I don't know, maybe, like
It
you said,
absolutely
it's like
ties
a
into
generational
self-awareness.
thing, but it's interesting.
But
Okay, let's
again,
move on to the next question.
I did an organizational management
Coaching.
class last semester, and we covered this, and most of my students go, I didn't even know those things existed. I mean, they'd never heard of them.
Well, it's like
But do
one
you
of
guys
those
get no
things,
coaching from your?
address on your resume.
Yeah.
Huh.
I've had
Thing
mentors,
that
like
a lot of
colleagues
hiring
who would
managers will do is go.
kind of. I mean, when I
actually
was
look
a
at the
junior
solo
engineer,
started, yeah.
you'd
Oh, I didn't know that.
one of my colleagues would
Yeah,
he wasn't an assigned mentor.
So what does that mean?
He kind of helped me out.
A cheap house, then you're not
flow
shouldn't hire
and
you?
stuff like that. But
No, I think it's because the manager isn't well equipped. Like maybe he's not as technical. I mean, that could be it. Because usually, like they call it being a manager is more of a soft skill. So maybe like
put Denver, Colorado.
Denver, Colorado, or whatever. Yeah, that's one of the big things. Because that's the danger of access to technology. And I think it'd be scary the amount of information that
like I guess for you to be in a company that has managers coach their subordinates, then I guess the manager has to start off as one of the technical engineers or
I didn't know that, but that didn't
then
surprise
get
me.
bumped up.
Probably for a price, you could probably get just about anything you want.
A manager.
What is Ron buying at King Supers? Every month.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So he can coach you in other ways.
That might be a little scary.
But yeah, I mean, like,
make that.
I think it's
Although I don't know, how's that tie into biases?
Home addresses.
did you have something else?
No, that's it.
Negatively affect.
Yeah, you want to, but it's little crazy things like that that people don't really think about.
Yeah.
It's always been on there.
I think
totally
Evan,
forgot.
I think of rock
That sounds like something Evan would
squeak and
pull
pull
up.
But obviously he knew the game
Marketing
well enough
metrics.
that he could coach a great one. So more towards sports. Obviously, the coaches are not nearly
10, 15 years ago, they started to do auditions.
Does it really correlate into the technical field? Not 100%.
Yes.
Musicians, they put out
Yes, I've heard that.
thing, and then the next step was actually to put a carpet because
you're designing the gear. I don't know.
A woman or a man.
Or tennis shoes.
That's great. But here,
walking from the door to the chair where they had to audition behind the curtain. Oh, that's more productive. And then they started to actually fine tune it. It's like
you're saying coaching is just a
trombone player.
Exactly. Anyway.
Yeah, and I also feel like it
can be X,
something
Y, or
very
C
unique
player
in the
that I
sense of,
know.
like, you let that person that you're
identify the way they phrase, the way they breathe.
with that.
It's also
help them
a
along
fact
the way
that
in an indirect way. Like I don't know if that's also
we give
coaching, but I feel like that's definitely a
we
leadership
give favor to people that we find
It's
attractive.
just like supporting someone.
So somebody that's attractive versus somebody that's unattractive, or at least according to the person that's making the judgment, might be a difference between getting that audition or not. I think it's great. I think the fascinating thing is these people actually know.
I think it's about
they have
recognizing
these
the potential.
but just knowing it is not good enough. They actually force themselves to not
know what their
sex or what they look like or who they are or any of that.
I mean, they have
awesome,
a certain
in my
skill.
There was a resistance.
Process-oriented flow.
Well, I'm sure there was.
Potential thing that they can quickly learn something, or they're adapted to something, or something like that. A manager or somebody else, like your teacher can, or your coach in sports example, can recognize that skill, right? And then can help you focus on that, to develop that, give you exercises to work on or opportunities to work on. I mean, take the software world or technical world. Say, why don't you try developing this script, or if he thinks that you're a good script writer or something, develop or whatnot, right? There's multiple.
That's a little freaky.
It's all about getting the right opportunities and creating those opportunities for your employees. That's where the potential. I mean, you get a feel for things, and then I think that's the role of the manager, in my opinion.
We could run amok in society with all of
correct. I'd give you those opportunities to try it out. I mean, you have the potential, but unless you try it out, there's no proof.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Right? So that's where I think the manager comes in for me, is has to create me those opportunities. I can't go around looking for opportunities. I mean, what's the manager there for? If I'm just doing my job and that's all he cares about, then I'm not growing in my field.
I know full well that
I don't do new stuff.
Even if
exposed to new things,
because I'm down there, so
I'm going to
I
stay
know
where
for
I am.
sure that my beliefs don't necessarily, especially with his. And I was like, dude, you don't want to see any of this stuff.
To make you
you're not going to have any fun.
It's not going to be any fun for you or me.
Right? And so I was just like, but then I kind of feel weird because he's like, oh man, he didn't accept my friend request.
Hey,
So
can
I
we
know
talk
people
about
that have
ADT?
2 Facebook pages.
Yeah.
They have a personal Facebook page.
Well, I have a business one. Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah,
And I try to keep the personal one
literally
filtered,
was
but
my 3.5 years
there are
at
a few on there.
MIT. Like literally every single
I
day.
still refuse to do Facebook.
So I
well,
think that, I mean,
I talked to my undergrads, and they don't.
Yeah, Facebook's too
I
dangerous.
like saw so much
My undergrads
about
don't do
myself and,
Facebook; they
my
do
classmates
Snapchat.
and
I think
everything.
Snapchat
And I
isn't
think
that the one
the
that it only
administration was,
exists for a certain
taking
amount of
some
time, then it
steps
goes
to try
away.
to-
Now they have the glasses.
And so
figure it out because it was
the
becoming
newer
like,
generation,
a mental health
they're on
issue.
to this thing of
Like, I
that
mean,
digital
my
footprint, and they're very leery of,
IT had 3 suicides
you know,
in like a
their
year.
boss seeing something from 5 years
exactly.
ago.
So like at
Hilarious
that
thing
point,
about Snapchat
the
and
administration
all
was like,
those,
"Whoa,
all the
like,
records are still there.
yeah, this is an incredible place
For who?
environment, but like,
Well, but
you can't push it
Snapchat-
out
On the servers that they
Yeah.
That's the
transit,
result,
you know,
right?
on the servers.
So somebody would have
obviously
to
that's a
find a way to
theme park
access
and, like,
those. I
very
mean, it's not out there for
extreme, but I
public
mean, it was
viewing.
like
hackers already
for
do
like
it,
the
get
time
it.
that
Yeah, well, that's
That's
a whole different story. I mean, there's so much of what we've done.
Nothing disappears.
Yeah, nothing disappears. It's all out there if somebody hacks it.
Right, and it's not even
That's why
like
for a while I saw a lot of
at
people
some
they
point
would
it's
change
not
their
even
last name.
just like coming
But it's
from
like,
like
you
the
know,
professors or coming from the
nobody's-
administration. It's like
If you want to find
coming from
somebody on
yourself,
Facebook,
hey,
it's like,
I
you know, if you know anybody else
this
in their
is the level
network,
man.
like, you're going to be able to
format,
find
but I'm
them.
still
It's not hard.
classes,
Since
and I can't
I, like,
perform
started
at that
using
level with each
Facebook,
one of them,
you know,
so something's got to
whenever
give.
that was, decade
But like
ago.
it's not
I
hardwired.
just
within
knew
you to
that,
be
hey,
able
anything I
to
put on
say,
there-
hey, I'm not
Yeah.
going to give it my all in this class.
And so I
that
just
can copy.
don't
You know,
put
so it's
anything
like,
on there that I.
It's like a weird thing that I
To me, it's not that hard.
to like read.
If I want to have, I'll have discussions over a
Knowing
beer
that
that
this is a thing.
make sure nobody has a tape
It's
recorder.
a thing that a lot of people.
That's how I
see in
discuss
people
things
is like
that,
huge to
you know, maybe
try
might
to
be censored.
combat
It doesn't need to be
So-
on Facebook in my
Oh,
opinion.
for sure.
Interesting thing that I read in this article.
There's different venues.
Interesting was how we explained what.
Yeah.
Now,
And this is actually happening.
Jeez, they have no clue how Facebook works if they're saying
So
that.
simple to combat it. Just go
And
back
then
to
if they say only my friends saw it, they
Exactly.
still have no clue.
I never thought about that. You know, just take like
Their friends are their friends if their friends see.
I forgot what you mentioned in the
Anyway,
article.
good stuff.
And
All right.
even like
Maybe we,
exercise or like sports or like something like that.
About
Yeah.
15
Just
minutes,
to like
huh?
go be away from
Activate
it for
that
a
part of your
while and
mind
then
so you can come
yeah.
back and do that job.
What you said, Katie, is what I like.
All right, let's reconvene. Let's muster.
And like I love that they
I mean, some
totally
filters are
targeted engineers
fantastic.
here were like
Really,
the type of
really
people who would be like triggered by that by
Buddy.
like, showing like, hey,
Never
this is a real thing. It's not
Snapchat?
just,
A
like,
jump roping snowman and
mental.
just
Like
put
it's
your
a
face
real
up
thing.
on-
Like this is what's happening with your brain.
You don't have to put your mouth on
Exactly.
like a pug.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and these
Oh,
are
look, I'm a
ways to
dog.
fix it. Step-by-step process.
Yeah, being good better, right?
Yeah, go on.
All right, we are back. All right, some good discussion. I tried to poke my head in on your guys' discussion, and I didn't find anything to jump in there with. I apologize, but I did have some good side discussions with the group over here. So I've heard, obviously, we've kind of talked about what the online students were thinking about the reading. Anything you guys want to share? I know you just had a group discussion, but or you know your leadership group, but anything you want to bring to the larger group? You know, we're talking about flow, we're talking about cognitive biases, coaching, ADT, some good stuff in there.
We were talking. We just discovered that the idea that Gopal had about flow and the idea that me and Katie probably had about flow were a little different because probably a little bit of a generation gap.
Oh.
So how the
Generation gap?
Yeah.
Is flow different for different generations?
Yeah,
Yes.
the idea of how he wanted to generate flow was different from how we would generate flow.
All right. You guys want to share those two definitions?
For me, it's all about cutting out the distractions. If you can cut out the distractions, at least I can see myself focusing more at the job at hand. The more I get distracted with multitasking, I'm not at optimal efficiency at that point.
Okay. I like everything you've said so far.
So that's my first step. And once I focused on something, I tend to I can keep my focus for a longer time then.
Okay.
But it's the emails and the everything popping up on my screen all the time. It causes me all these distractions that I can't tend to focus as much as I know I can.
Okay.
And the other example is, for me to do my studying, night is the only time I can do it because I work full time. And I'm so tired, I just can't focus at that point. I just wake up early in the morning to do my reading. And I find that to be the best time because I have no distraction. Everybody's asleep.
Be a morning warrior.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, it's about that.
Yeah, go to bed earlier and get up earlier. You know, if you're saying you're not a morning person, try it. It's such a good time. You're at high octane with your brain. All right, so I don't know. We're the same generation, I guess, because I liked everything you said. What's your guys' definition?
Yeah, I mean, so specifically you made the comment that it would be good for him to just not be connected to the internet or connected to anything for like multiple hours during the day. And like I personally said that would stress me out so much because if I didn't have access to like an instant messenger or something where I could, I know I'm the problem, but where I could like, contact someone in like just listen, hear me out.
Katie, talk to your sister.
Yeah, I know, right? Be a therapist. But no, where you could contact someone like in a department adjacent to you and say, hey, what was the value for this? Like, I think just having that backup is like, okay, so from there, I also think that we were talking about just like the difference between being in like a open environment, like lots of desks, having like a very open communication, how that's becoming very different from like the way that engineering used to be, and how I personally, if I'm working on one thing at a time, I get so bored that I need to find something else to do at the same time. And that's like the way that I got through undergrad, and that's like going to be the way that I do grad school and continue on in life. So I think it's just like, it's a very, I don't know if it's necessarily generational, but as much as like learning style and like work style in general, but it seemed to be like a common thread. And like, do you have anything else to add to that?
I just feel like for us, for me and her, I think we would be more in a flow if we knew there were people backing us up than Gopal, who would rather just sit on his desk and focus and work alone and not have anyone come and disturb him.
Wow.
I think we need to get
Any comments on this? Because I'm biting my tongue so hard, it's bleeding.
No, say it. Say what you want to say.
So our group actually concentrated on the actual concept of flow and what flow actually is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we talked about like, you know, viewing it from mountain biking and rock climbing, and, you know, it's the mental state that you get into, not kind of necessarily what you're doing, but how you do it. And from our perspective, it's like you're on another plane of existence when you're in the flow. And if you're truly in the flow, you're not really seeing anything around you except for what you're doing. So, which that kind of gets more to his point.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, though, but that's me working on multiple things at once, or like juggling multiple things
Katie,
at once.
have we talked about multitasking yet?
And now it's not.
Multitasking isn't multitasking?
I'm just saying that's the way that it
Do you know multitasking, or at least to be good at multitasking, is a myth?
Yeah.
For the most part?
Yeah.
I mean, you know that, right?
Yes.
And also the death of the open environment. They've done a lot of follow-up studies on the open environment and how it actually causes much more distraction to actually focus.
I would recommend you, seriously, if you have some time to read the book Deep Work.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's a good
I don't know if it'll change the way you do things, but it should open your eyes to some things that maybe, I don't know.
I mean, okay, so to be fair, to be fair though, okay, so I didn't.
I'm not trying to criticize you.
No, and
this is epidemic in our society right now. Yeah. In my opinion. And right now, as a 48-year-old man, I'm trying to break some of the habits. These dopamine hits that you're talking about, your brain just goes, I want a dopamine hit. I want another one. I want another one. I want another one. And I want another one.
100% agree.
Yeah. I want that instant messenger. I want that notification from Facebook. I want that. Yeah. And we don't even realize that we get addicted to it. Yeah. Absolutely. It's like, you've probably heard, it's like cocaine. And so you have to ask yourself, is it really the best use of your time? And I think that's really the key here, is do we want to have, in the book Deep Work, he talks about being in the shallows. That's in the shallows. You're not going to go deep. And that's where quality comes from, in my opinion. Quality work comes from that deep, focused work, where you lose track of everything else. When you're in flow, your Facebook notification doesn't even register because you're so focused on that. It's like you have blinders on. I'm just into this. And so, yeah, I would say And again, I don't want to criticize either one of you, but from what you're describing, that doesn't sound like flow to me. And I would say do more research on flow to kind of get an idea. We'll talk about it more, but if you don't want to wait for me and my lecture, do some research on it.
So one of the things that in like a work environment that I would say helps me merely thinking of the kind of losing track of time and working is definitely, it's not a multitasking thing, but it's kind of what you did when we broke into our groups and you put on, ambient music. And that's the one thing that I will do is I will turn on, a Sigur Rós, Pandora station, or a very ambient music station. That actually helps for me to drown out the other distractions. People walking down the hall. I at least have really high cubicle walls and a full door. But that ambient music for me really helps kind of focus down.
And it's different for everybody. Some people like that. Some people just like silence. Some people, silence freaks them out. I would say if you're going to listen to music, don't listen to it with words.
Yeah.
That would be my only recommendation.
Or if it has words, have it be words in a language that you don't understand.
Yes. That was the other thing is one of my undergrads brought that up is sometimes she likes to listen to music that is, a language she doesn't understand. And that's okay too. I listen to Spanish music and although I speak a few words in Spanish, I don't know it fluently. So it works for me. But that's another thing that's backed up by research. You may think you're ignoring that music in the background, but your brain's latching onto those words. And it's just distracting you. You won't, in my opinion, you won't get into a flow state when you're listening to that kind of music. Good.
First of all, I think I just realized flow when you explained it with the. That was the first time I could relate. But then I'm wondering, can you have that state of flow while interacting with other people? That seems like.
That's a great question. I think there's a state of flow when you're. A lot of my friends, I have friends that fly on an aerobatic formation team. They're ex-military pilots, and they go to air shows and they fly in formation. And there is such a thing, I think, of flow like that, where all of them are in flow. I don't know as much about that. It's something I want to dig into more, but I do think it exists. So yeah, that's a good insight. I do think it's out there. I can't talk about it in a lot of detail because I'm not sure about it.
So I think it exists. I do like brainstorming sessions with one of my coworkers, and we'll just sit in a room and not have anything else going on and just like be writing on a whiteboard, and 2 hours will pass.
Yeah.
So
that's a good real world example right there. I mean, really to me, that's one of the good indicators that you're in flow is you just completely forget how much. I was telling this group over here that they're doing a lot of studies right now with video gaming. And video gaming is just a perfect environment for flow. Anybody, if you've ever video gamed, I'm not a huge video gamer, but you can 4 or 6 hours go by and you're like, holy moly, where'd the time go? Because you're so focused on that. Are you being challenged? Yeah. The things that you need to get into flow, you need some skill, are right there for gaming. So that's another example.
Is flow more about focus or productivity?
Is flow more about focus or productivity? I would say it's both.
Yeah, I think the focus leads to productivity.
Yeah, exactly. When you're focused on something that deeply, it's kind of hard not to be productive at it. Now, it depends on what you call it. How do you define productive? If I'm mountain climbing, I don't know, is there a productivity metric from that? I don't know that it needs to, maybe there is. I don't know anything about rock climbing, but I'm thinking some of the hobbies that I like to do. I get into it sometimes when I fly aerobatics. I guess I'm trying to be really good at it, so maybe that'd be a productivity.
If you have like your engine misfires or something while you're in one.
Yeah, I break it right out of flow right then.
Yeah.
I have to change my drawers, and that gets my attention. No, it's not really that bad. But. So anyway, that's a good discussion. Flow, like I said, it's a fascinating topic. I encourage you to research it. I was also telling this group that it's very prevalent in extreme athletes. Anything that you're going to be doing that could kill you or, severely hurt you, you can get into flow pretty quickly. That doesn't mean that you need to go take up one of those hobbies to get into flow. I'm just saying that that is a area that's rampant for that. So we'll talk a little bit more about flow. But anything else on here that you guys want to talk about? Coaching. We talked about that a little bit, right? ADT. Anybody fascinated by that? Attention deficit trait. Katie's raising her hand. What you were describing sounded like ADT.
I mean, okay, so I shared with this no, exactly. I shared with this group that I loved reading that paper. I did my undergrad at MIT, which I guarantee you if you asked any of my classmates, they would describe flow in the exact same way that I did. But also, like, my time at MIT was 3.5 years of ADT, like, every single day.
Yeah.
So, like...
And that right there, I don't mean to interrupt, but ADT and flow, I don't know that those go hand in hand.
No, but I mean, I'm just saying...
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So I think that it's just like a different, and that was like the most extreme environment that I've been in that I've had to adjust to. And I think that that adjustment has like created mental models of ADT. And I honestly do think that there's a correlation between ADT and how you think about flow and how you...
Maybe. That's interesting.
That...
I totally agree on that one.
Timmy, what do you got for us?
Well, and this is where I think we have a difficulty distinguishing between working to a smaller purpose versus what we term multitasking. Because, you know, especially when it comes to like the same work that was being brought out, you're going to have 3 or 4 things being shot at you at once. So what you can always do is break it into smaller achievable tasks where you can define your flow metric, if you will, this time period or this functionality where once you reach that smaller goal, you've gotten to a completion, and then you can move on to the next fire or issue that you have to deal with. So do you climb the entire mountain in a day? No, but if you manage to make it to your next camping position, and then, you know, your meal is your next metric, that's really what you got to be able to look at. So I don't necessarily think multitasking in its broad definition is bad by definition. It's only problematic when you haven't sufficiently defined what your smaller goals are to achieving each and every task that's assigned to you.
Huh. All right. I can't pass this up without... I don't think I've done this with you yet. Hey, look at that. Oh, that makes my head hurt. I don't miss those.
Like, what are you trying to
I don't miss those days. All right, so let's talk about multitasking. You know, there's probably
a new board button.
Yeah, I don't know which one it is, but...
Oh, yeah, just make a new
We'll do it
sheet.
old-fashioned.
The plus at the bottom.
The plus?
Yeah.
10th sheet.
It's just another sheet. All right, fair enough. All right, so we have 100%. Let's just say we have a fixed amount of cognitive ability, right? When I say cognitive, you guys know what that means, right? When I say cognitive, just think brain. I mean, for all intents and purposes. So we have a fixed amount. When I am focusing on, let's say, task A, task B, task C, I've got to divide my 100% cognitive ability into those 3 things when I'm multitasking. Let's just say it's 33%. Are we getting quality on any one of those tasks?
No.
Sure, we've got 3 balls in the air. Okay, if you think that's a good thing, I would challenge you on that. But basically, what we're doing is we're diluting our quality for each one of those things, and you can divide that up however you want. You know, you want to call it 50, 25, 25, whatever. It's still diluting that 100%. We cannot create more cognitive ability when we're multitasking. So this is where I say this is a myth that when people say, I'm really good at multitasking. And I'm going to give you an alternative idea of what multitasking should be.
I feel like, and maybe I understood this wrong, but kind of the way that Timney explained it was kind of, it was breaking up your big goal into smaller goals.
Sure.
But it still sounded like serial processing. You're going to hike, and then you're going to have lunch, and then you're going to continue your hike, and you're going to have lunch. Where what I, heard from the other explanation was, I'm going to hike, and I'm going to unicycle, and I'm going to knit a sweater while I'm hiking, and I'm going to eat my lunch also while I'm hiking, and I've got a camelback on, I'm going to be drinking. And
Timmy's laughing.
Doing all of this.
Yeah, juggling. And
right.
Yeah.
Was hiking and drinking all at the same time. I puked, so it wasn't good. I stopped doing it.
Unless that is the purpose of the exercise.
Yeah, right.
So what I would offer as a different way to look at multitasking, and I read this in a book about Wall Street traders. I mean, you're on the Wall Street floor. There's a ton of things you got to keep track of, right? And so how do they manage that? How do they multitask that? So what they do is they still have these A, B, and C, just for this example. But they're doing this, 100%. Bam, then I switch to this one, 100%. Bam, then I switch to that one. So I'm just going boom, 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 and I'm giving full focus to that one thing at a time. That doesn't mean that I can't switch quickly. And if you're trained in doing that as your job, you can do that quickly. But that is a better example of how to multitask properly. This way, it doesn't do anybody any good. And I cringe when people say I'm really good at multitasking. I mean, shoot this down. Do you guys agree with this? Shoot holes in this.
I'm with you on that, but there's what they say there's an epidemic of ADT, but it's definitely a generational thing. Like I look at my little brothers, and they got an iPad, they got a phone, they're watching TV, they're doing all at the same time, and it's just a generational thing. I think the next group of people going into college or going into the industry is just going to have it because they're kind of into it.
Let's be a little careful. I'm 48 and I have it. I started at the beginning of this technology boom. Kind of growing up in it. I remember doing coding in BASIC, if you guys are old enough to remember that, on black and white computers. And so, I was birthed into this. And so I've grown up in it, and I've really kind of embraced technology. So I'm sucked into it almost as bad as, the millennials are, I feel. But I think that the younger generation, yes, they're more bombarded with it, but hopefully they have more tools like this that I didn't know about 10, 20 years ago. Most of us didn't know about. So hopefully they're going to find ways to cope with this better, just like my generation had other things to cope with. Timmy?
So here's the problem, is that both the left-hand side vision of task assessment and task completion to the right are being described under the same branch. And we don't, at least when I was going through school the first time, we didn't necessarily have that kind of designation between the two. So both of these metrics are multitasking in this broad sense that was given to us.
I don't know if I'm following. So you're talking about left brain, right brain thinking? What do you...
No, on the board. So the methodology...
left,
100% back, 100% is being fit under the same umbrella as the 30-30-30 or 33-33-33. And because there's no clear designation between those processes, we're almost left to figure it out by experience how to deal with the concept of multitasking.
I absolutely agree with that, and
this concept is not resonating with either one of you?
No, it is. But what I'm saying is the red, I consider that multitasking, and that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
About having 3 different things on my desk and jumping.
Well, can we agree that these are 2 different things?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, let's be honest. These are different things, and I would say this requires much more discipline.
I think they're both multitasking in a sense, though.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to say that both of those are multitasking. Okay. It's just a different definition.
Yeah, totally agree.
And Timney, I'm sorry, what was I missed that last part.
I was concurring completely.
Okay.
That's the problem is we get the term multitasking, but we don't actually get the way that it's being defined? Are we talking about focused attention on, going to one spot, one object, then switching, or complete attention on all three things at the same time? Those types of definitions are usually lacking both at the academic level and oftentimes at work.
Yeah, I would agree. Has anybody seen this before tonight? I'm sorry. You guys have seen that?
Yeah.
I just read about this 3 months ago. Just learned about this. I wish somebody would have taught it to me 25 years ago. So I don't know, and I think I agree with Timmy. This is not something that, I'll bet all of you that raised your hand, you didn't pick this up in school, did you? You probably read a book about it.
No, or it was in one of the other classes, but it's the...
Oh, really? What other class?
It had to be somewhere in then 5032 if we didn't hear about it in here. But being good at multitasking...
My colleagues are doing good.
...is solely the speed at which you can switch.
Yes. To be really good at multitasking, I would agree.
It's the speed and how you can switch and how you can have the other task going into kind of like a subconscious level.
Yes, and that is the key here. I want to emphasize, this is not easy, I don't think. You have to work at this to get good at it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, focus, 100%, bam, and then completely forget about everything else that's going on. Think of that person on the Wall Street floor. I mean, it's total chaos. And I've got to focus on this one thing, this one number. And then I got to make a decision on that number. Okay, now I got to move to this number. And I've got to make a decision. And I have to forget about that last number. Or the one that's coming next, right? You think that's easy? I don't think so. And I think this is something you got to work at. You got to be aware of it, and then you got to work at it. But please, if you want to multitask, do it this way, not this way. I guess that's my message.
I'll admit I do the same thing, that was brought up about, the younger kids who have, the phone out and they're watching TV.
Oh.
I do it, but I'll look up from the phone and go, what has been happening in this TV show? And rewind it and then go, start again. But then, something will pop up on the phone. I'll look at it and I'll miss the...
Yeah, we'll get into a whole downward spiral if I get talking on that. I did the same thing. I grew up in a house where the TV was always on. I got to a point, I was a bachelor, I had nobody else in the house. I'd be cleaning the house and I had to have the TV on. What is the deal with that? I didn't even get it for a long time. It was just the way I was brought up, and I guess it gave me company to listen to the TV in the background. I wasn't even watching it, but that noise and the TV going. I watch about, 3 or 4 hours of TV a week now, if I'm lucky. It took me a while to break that habit, but my point is, most of us were brought up that way, and I would do the same thing. I'd watch a TV show and I'd have my iPad out, and I'd do this. What's the point? You do one or the other. Put the quality into one or the other, but don't do them both. I don't want to sound like I'm on a soapbox. I know I probably do, but all right, good talk, good discussion. Let's talk about flow real quick. I apologize, I didn't get the reference on this. To give credit, I don't completely like it because this should be, coming right to the corner there. But I asked you in your reading, what can a leader do to encourage a flow state? I think this is fascinating. So when we're down here, we've got a high skill level and we got a low challenge. They call it arousal. Just think of arousal as being challenge. So I'm in a low challenge state, high skill, I'm bored. Up here, high challenge, low skill, I have anxiety. What can I do as a leader to fix that for my team?
Know your constituents.
Yeah, that's where we start. But if I'm down here, what do? How do I get them up here? This is where we want to be, right? This is our flow state.
Adjust the parameters.
If we're here, they have high skill, I'm not giving them enough challenge. It's not a challenging enough job. I need to increase the challenge, right? That's ideally what I want to do. Same thing when they're failing. I always like to say leaders need to set their team up for success. If you put somebody in a position they don't have the skills to perform the task, whose fault is that? It's your fault as a leader. And so if they're up in this area, what do I need to do? You either need to decrease the challenge or increase their skill.
Or allow them to fail and then coach them through the failure to learn the lesson. To come back around.
Sometimes a little bit of failure is good as long as you're there to coach them. Yeah, I would buy into that. But my point is this flow thing, it's a nice thing for us on an individual basis. But I'd like to sit down with a lot of managers and show them this and make them. I spent a lot of my career right here. I was not engaged. And, shame on me that I didn't I wasn't more proactive with my manager to say, hey, I need some more challenge. But at the same time, I wish he would have got that clue as well. But again, a lot of my career I didn't even know about flow. I didn't understand what was going on here. This dynamic, I didn't know. So she's showing this, this kind of cycle of what we want to do: increase the challenge, increase skills, decreasing challenge, increasing skills. So just keep in mind, again, we'll go into this in more detail, but realize that as leaders, you have some power to at least set up conditions for flow for your team. Now, it's not quite that easy that are automatically going to go into flow when you set up those situations, but you're giving them that atmosphere, that environment for flow.
I mean, we're already kind of talking about this, but I would say that chart could almost use a third dimension about how well someone's being led. Because there's been times where I have been in that anxiety level and gone to my leader and tried to get help, and the anxiety just increased because I felt I was not being led in such a way that he helped me decrease that anxiety, but I felt somewhat berated for not having.
Yeah. So what do you think the conditions were for you? I don't know, not getting what you thought you needed. I mean, why did the anxiety level go up?
Because instead of being like, all right, well, let's go through and talk about this problem, let's kind of brainstorm a way to increase that skill, I just felt like I was kind of left in that anxiety level, but then also the anxiety was increased because then I felt like I let him down.
So what you had was a boss like Ryan.
Right.
Let you fail. I don't care. Just go fail. When you get done, I'll coach you.
But that's the problem.
I think that's a good point. If you're a manager and you knew that, somebody on your team comes to you and says, hey, I think I'm in over my head here. Do you say, hey, buck up? That's what we pay you for. Right? Or do you say, all right, let's talk about this. Maybe I can talk you through it. Maybe I can talk you off the edge of the cliff. Maybe it's not as bad as you think it is. Or maybe we just need to decrease the challenge or increase your skill. We got to do one of those two things, right?
Break it up, and mutual agreements and.
Yeah, and you should. I would advocate that as a leader, you need to be open to that discussion.
Or sometimes just tell them, you know what? I know this is more than what you can handle right now. You're not going to be able to do it all. Pick the task that you can take care of within the time frames, and we'll take it from there.
And to your point, maybe we want to frame it as, I know this is going to be a big challenge for you, but I think you're up for it. I'll be here to help you, get through it, but I want you to try to do this. What's wrong with that? You know as a leader that they may fail, but you want them to try it anyway because you want them to grow. That's not bad either. At least we're all up front, right? You've brought your concern to me. I'm, kind of talking you through it. We've acknowledged where you're at. And quite honestly, if I do that with you and you fail, that's on me.
Your boss is probably telling you, stop whining, just go do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not saying it directly, but making you feel that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Good. All right, one more. Anybody ever seen the Yerkes-Dodson curve?
I literally just learned this in one of my classes today.
Really? Today?
Today, like literally today.
This ties really closely to flow state, in my opinion, and it's kind of just a different way of looking at it. And so up here, we would call this would be flow state. We got optimal arousal, optimal performance. And so the reason I like to show this is, what's another word for arousal? What's that?
Interest.
Interest? Okay.
Stimulation.
Okay. I might buy that. What's that?
Motivation?
Yeah, maybe. What's that?
Excitement?
Yeah, all kind of tied together. All these are very relatable. The word I'm looking for is stress. Is arousal stress? And when we talk about stress, that's going to pop up here. Is all stress bad?
No.
One of my managers had
Why do you say that?
pressure, but not necessarily stressed out.
I didn't hear that, Timmy. What?
One of my previous managers described it as stress versus pressure. You can be under a pressurized situation, but as long as it's not harming the integrity of your work, positive. But once it doesn't harm your integrity,
Okay. You're kind of touched on it. So if we look at the Yerkes-Dodson curve, pardon my stress, you probably can't read that. Essentially, eustress is good stress. Distress is the negative stress. Most of the time when people say stress, they're talking about distress. And so really what I want to show here is, I like to ask people, if in a perfect world, should we just eliminate stress? Should we eliminate that arousal? I think you guys all kind of touched on the fact that arousal is important. You know, all those words that you used, motivation and things like that, excitement, those come with arousal, right? What are you going to say, Ryan?
I was going to say, without arousal, you're kind of a automated robot.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't do anything without something to prompt us for action, right? And that's what that arousal is doing. So really, when we get up to this, from here, until we get here, this is all good stress. We want that. Because what happens? Look at this curve. Stress gets higher. What's my performance doing as my stress goes up? My performance is going up too. So we want to harness that arousal, that stress. Sometimes it's fear. We want to harness our fear to get more performance. But we do get to a point of diminishing returns, and then it starts becoming a negative thing. We lose performance. And quite honestly, when we get to the far right side, we're in deep doo-doo.
The same curve is actually used in elite coaching. So basically trying to time peaking, so optimal performance, and then balancing it to make sure you're not overtraining.
Sure.
Gosh,
there's probably a lot of things that this would hold true with. Even in economics, there's always a point of diminishing returns, right? It's good, and there's going to be a point. It doesn't just keep going up. And so that's the way it works with arousal and stress. All right, I'm way past giving you guys a break. Well, let's take a 10-minute break. Be back at 7:30. I apologize for going so long, but it was such a good discussion. And just think of it. You'll only have a little bit to go after we get back. All right, I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. I apologize for that in advance, but I kind of want to touch on some of this, and let's try not to get too far into discussion, but I want to touch on some points here. All right, so Ryan was just telling me how much he doesn't like Tony Robbins, but I like this quote. If you are not growing, you are dying. You think that's a little dramatic?
A little.
No.
No?
I like if you're not progressing, you're regressing.
Yeah.
It's very cliche.
It is cliche, and Ryan likes Tony Robbins, so he's going to.
Yeah.
It is cliche, but I agree with it. And there's studies that say that, the people that become, stagnant in life, actually age faster. So in some sense, I think there's truth to this.
So how I relate this, though, to real life is when people retire and they don't have hobbies or pursuits, and how quickly they deteriorate from a physical health and mental health perspective. It's pretty amazing just to kind of see people that are kind of those constant learners that continue even after their job to continue to grow, and those that don't, they die very quickly. So I mean, it is pertinent.
Premature aging, I mean, really. You can watch people just age before your eyes if they do something like that. No purpose in life anymore. We are hardwired for improvement and learning. That's just the way it is, and even the laziest among us likes to learn new things. So this is a core principle of this, is keep learning. All right, so I talked about my idea of warrior leader, and we're going to touch on this a little bit. So when you think of a warrior, this is pulled out of dictionary.com, a person who shows or has shown great vigor, courage, or aggressiveness, as in politics or athletics. It doesn't have to be a soldier or anything like that. It can be something like this. I've redone that, and I call it this. This shows great vigor. I switch out aggressiveness because I don't think aggressiveness is something that we should be. I may get pushed back on that, but I don't believe in aggressiveness. I do like assertiveness, and there is a difference. And then I pose it in the context of leadership. So that's what I call a warrior leader. And so that leads me to the victim mindset. Have anybody heard this before? A lot of HR departments like to do this as a training. Hopefully you didn't roll your eyes too much, because there's a lot of value in this. And I know it's a little bit of an eye chart, but it's a mentality. And are you going to go through life playing the victim? And quite honestly, you are allowing that to happen if that happens. And I know you're probably going, in your head, you're going, no, that's not true. Some things just happened to me. It has nothing to do with me. And I'm going to say, take a lesson from the Stoics and realize that how you react to the things that happen to you will make you either a victim or a warrior in this context. You buy into that? Is this just, kind of a mind over matter thing? Have a positive attitude and everything's going to be great? In some sense, it kind of is. You'd be surprised what a positive attitude can do for you. I know Gopal and I talked about this earlier, that Gopal doesn't agree with me, but I hope you're coming around.
You don't want to be unrealistic in your optimism.
Yes, and I did say that to Gopal. I said, we got to keep it in check, right? We got to blend some realism in with our optimism. But you certainly, in my opinion, if you're going to have a spectrum, because it's not binary between, being pessimistic or negative, whatever you want to call it, and being optimistic, I think we want to be on the past the midpoint with optimism. And a lot of good things will happen from that. Trust me on this. I don't have enough time to really go into a lot of that, but and I hope you're reading these. I'm not going to read them all, but this is just a kind of a different mindset of how you're going to look at the world. Is it win-win or is it win-lose? Is it scarcity versus abundance? Is it, your fear of loss? All these things. Are we defensive or are we offensive? Are we reactive or are we proactive? On and on we go. Just a different mindset. Cool? I like this quote. Never be bullied into silence. Never allow yourself to be made a victim. Accept no one's definition of your life. Define yourself. And really, the key here is don't allow yourself to be the victim. Does anybody want to push back on that? Does anybody disagree that you're allowing yourself to be a victim? Or somebody, T-bones your car in an intersection. They ran a red light. You're a victim, right? You can play that. Or you can play the warrior. I don't know. It's up to you. Yeah, was it fair? No, it wasn't. But so? How are you going to react to it? Are you going to mope? Are you going to, hire a good lawyer? Sue? On and on. You can see where this goes, right? It's a downward spiral that leads nowhere good. All right, victim mindset. These are some. This is kind of like a little checklist of if you feel like you're getting into that victim mindset. Go through some of these questions. What happened? Who wronged you? How did they hurt you? I mean, quite honestly, if you start asking these questions, you're going to find out that a lot of times it's not nearly as bad as you think. How do you react to it? And maybe what should you have done different? What punishment do they deserve? I always like this one. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, it means their firstborn child should be killed, right? I mean, quite honestly, we laugh, but I've seen some people get so angry about such little things that, like, holy moly, if there was capital punishment, they'd be, put them in the electric chair for that. So, yeah. And then it's not my fault. That's always probably the first thing out of a victim's mouth. It's not my fault. Who cares?
We're shifting of blame.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just blaming in general. I mean, we always like to blame somebody else. And, if you don't like my warrior mentality here, which, that's kind of my thing, sometimes this is called generative, having the generative mindset. And it's just, a kind of a more generative way to look at it. And these are some questions from that side of it. The last one I think is pretty pertinent. What lesson can we take away from this? Sometimes it's going to be a little hard to pick out a lesson, but a lot of times if you work at it, you can find a lesson. All right. Recognize the moments of choice. Does this sound anything like Stoicism? You always have a choice. How are you going to react? And I love this. The only thing you cannot choose is not choosing. But guess what? Not choosing is also a choice. So really, when you really boil it down, you have to make a choice. You can either act or not act. They're both choices. And then remember, your choices and actions constitute your character. Hopefully you're living by your values. And, when something bad does happen like that, you can, look back on it one day and say, yeah, I lived to my values and my choices and actions were in alignment with that. Because at the end of the day, that's really how people are going to remember us. Offensive thinkers don't dwell on their pain or the unfairness in their lives. This came from a Navy SEAL that wrote First, Fast, Fearless, good book about leadership. And I like this quote. Because we're all going to have pain. We're all going to have unfairness in life. And so it's up to you what you're going to do with that. Are you going to be reactive to it? You're going to whine about it? You're going to complain? You're going to moan and groan? Or are you going to get on with it? So, learning. Why is it important? The book touched on this. The Leadership Challenge touched on this. We want to be tip of the spear. We want to know more than our team, right? So I think there's incentive for us to try to keep learning and keep being at the cutting edge. But that doesn't mean, and I think I've talked about this before, that doesn't mean that we have to attempt to know everything. That's just an impossible task. And quite honestly, probably not the best use of our time. We talked about this, right? We want to leverage the people on our team that might know more about something than we do. That's okay, right? I want to have a broad, general, sense of everything, but I don't need to be an expert in everything. Would you agree? I think too many leaders not only try to know everything, but feel like they've failed if they don't know everything. And they go, oh goodness, I'm supposed to be a leader. I'm supposed to have all the answers. My team's going to see me as weak, defective. I'm going to lose their faith. Katie?
Yeah, so my research is mostly, or largely, like learning to learn. And I think that's like...
Get up here. You can teach this part.
I mean, I look at how astronauts learn to adapt to certain environments. But just like broadly, the idea of learning to learn is, I think, huge for managers in general. Like, not that you know everything, but that you know how to obtain what you need to know.
Absolutely. Great. Man, I should have you as a guest lecturer. I bet you could give us some good wisdom from your research.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, education has always been a huge interest of mine, so it's neat that I can bring that into aerospace engineering.
Yeah, that's great, and I agree with you 100%. Having some kind of methodology to learn is huge.
And even like subconsciously, it's like fascinating what the brain is capable of.
Yeah, that's why I always say that when people have that TV on in the background and those commercials are flashing over the TV, that you think you're ignoring them. They're just being absorbed into your brain. Yeah, it's a little scary, actually. Yeah, that's a great point. So, and I think a little bit of that comes with age and experience, where you really get into a good groove on how to learn. But being a student in general, I think you get pretty good at it, right? I remember early in my undergrad career, I wasn't that great a student, but by the time I got done with my undergrad, boy, I was clicking pretty good because I learned how to learn. I learned the system. I learned how to play the system. But I think that all plays into that. And yeah, when you get out in the real world, you can't. A lot of times you can't go to somebody and say, "Hey, give me the answer to this." You got to figure it out, right? You don't get directions in the real world. When you're in this classroom, I'll probably give you very clear directions. You guys know this. You get out in the real world, a lot of times it's very vague. How do you get to that destination? So great point, Katie. Thank you. Learning increases our IQ. We talked about this, right? Oh, I skipped over. Set the right example. Model the way. If your team sees you dedicated to pursuing, excellence, to pursuing learning, do you think they might be more inclined to do the same thing? Do you want your team being to do that? Yeah. Increase our IQ. I just talked about that. We know that that's not a fixed quantity. We can actually increase our IQ. Our followers expect it, right? The people on our team expect us to be working hard to be the best leader we can be, and that means learning. So that's just part of the deal, part of the game. Gives us competitive advantage. We're talking about outside of our company. That's a competitive advantage. And then, to me, it's fun. Do you guys like learning? I love learning. I already told you that it's hardwired into us, but I think some of us really like it more than others. And I'm one of those people that I think it's a kick. It's not always easy, but that's part of the fun, too. Cool? How many of you guys know Seth Godin? I know a few of you do. All right, let's listen real quick to what Seth has to say about learning. This is a real short video. I think it's about 2 minutes. If you guys don't know Seth, he's a fascinating guy. If you read his books, they might make you crazy because he kind of writes like he's writing a blog, but his blog is quite fascinating as well, but that's another topic. But he's kind of a marketing guru. He does leadership as well, and just a guy that really thinks differently. You may not always agree with what he has to say, but man, oh man, he gets you thinking, in my opinion. If I can get this up. Bear with me, don't fall asleep.
Godin. I'm the author of 17 bestsellers. I've started a bunch of companies. I write a blog, but mostly I fail. I fail often, and I fail with relish because I understand that when I do something that might not work, I'm doing my best work. The people who are good at learning say, I like the feeling of not knowing yet. The same way the people who are good at skiing Say, I like the feeling of being just a little bit out of control. That's how you get good at skiing, and that's how you get good at math. The difficulty comes from the fact that if you are not open to living with the tension of being stupid, you can't possibly learn it. I call it thirstiness. And if you are thirsty, it means that you are willing to feel stupid. You are willing to try. You are willing to expose yourself to the unknown in order to sate what your desires are to get to the next level.
Notice how he said,
learning is
that I haven't learned yet. That is directly from the Growth Mindset book by Dr. Carol Dweck. Just because we fail, that doesn't mean that we're done. That doesn't mean we've reached our limit. That just means that I'm going to get it. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm going to get there. And so I think that's a key part of that takeaway there. How many people like to feel stupid? I struggle with this. If I'm learning something new, here's what I do. I try to do it by myself. I want to look stupid by myself before I go join a group. I'm working on it. I'm seeing a therapist, but yeah. I think a lot of us don't try because we don't want to feel stupid. We don't want to feel like an idiot or look like an idiot. And that's how we start. Anything we learn, maybe not always, but a lot of times, we look foolish. I still remember when I learned how to snowboard. After skiing, most of my life, and I switched over to snowboarding, and I was a pretty good athlete growing up. And I go, I'll get this, no problem. Holy moly, I was an idiot. And it was embarrassing, but man, once you finally get it, pretty cool. So I think you guys all get that. You guys are old enough to you've learned new things, right? You know how that feels. But again, don't let that feeling of I'm going to feel like an idiot or I'm going to look stupid stop you from trying something. All right, this one's a little bit longer. We're not going to watch this one. This one's about 10 minutes. It will be on D2L if you want to watch it. I really like Robin Sharma. If you guys, anybody know Robin Sharma? Okay, I finally found one you guys don't know. It's about 10 minutes long, and it's 5 lessons that he picked up from his mentors. And I really wanted to put this in here because that's a good source of your learning is from mentors. And his 5 tips are good ones. And just the thought process behind getting a good mentor. I think there's some good value in that video. And like I said, it's about 10 minutes long, I think. Tim Ferriss. You guys know Tim Ferriss? All right, I got a few head nods. This one, I like this one. It's a little bit different, a little different take. And he does plug, I think he was doing some kind of contest at the time he did this. So he plugs that a little bit. But if you don't know Tim Ferriss, I think he actually calls himself the human guinea pig. He just experiments with all kinds of things, and he documents it all and wants to know what works and what doesn't. Is it hype or is this real stuff? And to me, that's quite fascinating. This one's only a few minutes as well. There's a way to embed this in here, but I don't think I can do it on the Mac like this. Let's just skip over some of this.
Because I realized at a very young age I was the accelerated learning is important to me because I realized at a very young age I was the runt of the litter. I grew up, I was very small, I was born premature, got my ass kicked all over the place. And where I could exert my control or shape my own destiny was through learning and using books, documentaries, biographies, mentors in some cases, as an Archimedes lever where even as this tiny little kid, I could get good grades, I could out-debate, I could make things, write things, create things that other people couldn't. And And I mean, I've seen people do impossible things. You know, I've seen people just in the last few months who have never been comfortable putting their face underwater in 3 or 4 days go from not being able to swim one lap to swimming a half a mile in the open ocean. Learning languages well enough to go on live TV and be interviewed in 3 or 4 days. I've seen just ridiculous stuff, and it doesn't require that you have some special gift. It requires that you find a special toolkit, and all of that's related to accelerated learning. When I'm considering investing in a startup or advising a startup, there are a few things that I look for. Number one, I only invest in things that I understand and things that I use or would use myself. This is really, really, really important. Anytime I step outside of that is usually when the universe kicks me in the nuts really hard and I lose my money. I think it's critical to, as an entrepreneur, scratch your own itch. It increases the odds of success or the probability of success. And then as an investor, I look for people who are scratching their own itch. Other things I've learned through investing is team. Ideas are worth nothing. I mean, ideas are really, they're not a dime a dozen. They're just nothing. All the good founders I know, even the bad founders, can come up with ideas all day long. It doesn't mean anything. You have to be able to execute. And one of the sort of maxims that I was told once was, your success will be measured in the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. So I often get asked if an entrepreneur should, say, start a business based on one of their passions, or if they should find the most attractive market opportunity and build a business out of that, whether they like it or not. I don't think it's either or. I think you need both. I would say look at your own credit card statement. Identify where you spend.
All right. He's kind of getting off in
where you price.
Entrepreneurship there. There is some interesting stuff there, but this is a leadership class, so we'll stop it there. So he's talking about accelerated learning, which is fascinating, and he talks about learning to speak a language in like 3 or 4 days. I can't even wrap my head around that, but he supposedly has tapped into a system where you can do that. Fascinating to dig into. I'm not going to advocate that. I don't know if it works, but if any of you guys try it, let me know, because I'd love to know if he found this I don't know, this secret thing to accelerate learning. But he wrote The 4-Hour Work Week, and he kind of talks about hacking life down to it's not really the 4-hour work week, but he's basically saying we can get a lot done in a lot less time by doing certain things. So I haven't read the book, but it's a bestseller. All right, let's move on real quick. We just got a few minutes. 2 stances toward learning, the knower or the learner. I'm not going to read all these, but I always tell my young engineers that you're going to go into meetings and somebody's going to put you on the spot and ask you a question. My advice is don't act like you know that answer. Just say, hey, I don't know the answer, but I'll find out and I'll get back to you. So you guys are old enough to know that that's not a good way to do things, but it's how do you want to position yourself? Do you know everything, or are you open to learn? And I don't care how much you know, you can still be open to learn more. And I'm going to skip right to, you guys heard of the beginner's mind? I'm a huge proponent of this, sometimes called the child's mind. And it's basically just being, no matter what your expertise is to be open to possibilities that you don't know it all. I mean, in a nutshell, that's what it is. And to me, it's just a mind shift. Can we have beginner's mind throughout our whole life? I absolutely think we can, if that's what you want to do. How cool is it when somebody that is so smart and you say something to them and they go, wow, that's fascinating. Tell me more about that. Isn't that cool? Has anybody been around somebody like that? I have. It's cool. It's like, wow, this person is like 10 times smarter than me and they're asking me a question because they want to learn something new. They want to learn something from me. I mean, there's a lot of good things there, but they're open to that. And I really believe if, these people that have done this to me, it's not just a token. they're actually genuinely want to learn something from me. And I think to myself, you've forgotten more than I know. But again, everybody they meet they're like that. I know some people that they'll always ask somebody a question. I met somebody in my Alt MBA class. I don't know if I shared this story, but I built my airplane. It took about 5 years building it, and this guy, I think he was about 28 years old, but he was one of the smartest guys I've ever met. Just fascinatingly smart about so many things. And first thing out of his mouth is he goes, "What did you learn from that? What did you learn from building your airplane? What was your big takeaway?" Just think if you asked everybody you met something like that. If they told you a story, ask them what they learned from that. I may have shared. Did I share that story with you? Yeah. So just keep that open mind that you can continue to learn more. And here's a great quote that kind of sums that up. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. Right? What happens when you become an expert? Your mind closes down. Closes down to possibility. Why? Because you know it all. Right? All right. This was kind of covered in one of your articles. I'm not going to read it, but there's a ton of ways that we can be lifelong learners. When you get out of school, continue. That's the big takeaway with this. There's so much out there at our fingertips. And that kind of sums it up. All right, what takeaways? Anybody got some takeaways? We got 5 minutes. Give me some takeaways of tonight. How you're evolving as leaders. What are you going to take away that you're going to go put into action? And all your hands go up at once. So, man, it's late, Ron. It's time to go home and go to bed. We talked about a lot of stuff. Flow. We talked about learning. We talked about, goodness gracious, coaching, ADT. Nathan, go ahead. Kick it off.
Just in terms of kind of, being confident enough and taking the reins and not being afraid to fail, throughout just, I'm in just my second and third classes right now. But in terms of like taking the reins in my own job and, trying to lead up and just make things happen. We have a Colorado office, and, one of the things we said in one of the meetings was the principal said, we don't have a lot of simulation services work in Denver. I went, are we actively searching for simulation services work in Denver? No. That's an unfair metric. And so since then, I've attempted to do everything I can to grow that and have been, setting up meetings and going on those meetings and use what I've learned from, leadership and beginner's mind and project management for, being able to talk the talk in some of those conversations.
I'm going to beep out project management. Beep!
That I previously, wouldn't have had those tools to perform and be confident in, having those conversations.
Good. I love to hear that kind of stuff. I mean, really, what we're doing here, it's great in the classroom, but when you take it out there and put it into action, to me, some
of my coworkers, they're going to start punching me in the face because every time we have a conversation, I'm like, in my reading this week.
Yes. Be careful with that.
About this.
Yeah, that never goes over well with anybody, and you certainly don't want to do that to your boss. Right. Let me tell you what I learned in my class. I think I can help you.
Yeah, no, careful with that.
Yeah, you got to be real careful. People, yeah.
I have two things. One is that offer praise depending on the receiver's communication style and circumstance. So. That's something that you...
I'm trying to remember if we discussed that or if that was in one of the articles, but you sound like you may have picked that up from Nathan. That's a good point.
Well, yeah, I mean, we went around in circles for that, but yeah, it all depends. It's, but like you say, if you frame your praise based on the person who's...
That means that you need to know what the communication style of your team, of each one of the team is.
You have a better interpersonal relationship with them.
And
it's all benefits done, a win-win after that.
You see that overlap, right? We've talked about this before, getting to know your team, right? Everybody's different, and everybody's going to want that a little bit differently.
Yeah, and the other one is something that Seth Godin said is, if you fail with relish.
Yeah. I mean, really, we put such a negative connotation on failing, especially, in my opinion, in the United States. And, yeah, basically what he's saying is, you know what? Fail often, fail gloriously, fail with relish. The more times you fail, the more you're going to succeed. I know that sounds a little weird, but it's absolutely true. If I fail 9 times, there's a good chance that 10th time I'm going to be successful. And I will never get to that 10th time if I don't fail 9 times. I mean, you kind of get, that's part of the deal, right? Failing is part of the deal, and we may as well embrace it. I'm not saying that we go out and try to fail. I'm just saying that, embrace it as that stepping stone to where we want to get.
Everything's a numbers game.
It is. In a lot of sense, it is. Hopefully, we're getting those numbers where they're, the percentages are coming out better as we go on. But, yeah, it is a numbers game. What else? Good ones, Rudy. Go ahead, Aziz.
Ryan's analogy about mountain biking and climbing for flow really resonated with me because kind of like, I get the concept and I understood it, but then I was like, have I ever been in flow? And it was like, yeah, it happened. And then just trying to figure out how to get that kind of focus.
Well, I'm trying to remember, didn't you have a hobby of, was it martial arts or?
Yeah, jiu-jitsu. That's also
I was
very.
Say, you might get into it in that.
Definitely, I definitely do because again, with all those things, with jiu-jitsu, someone's trying to choke you out, and then with climbing, you can fall down the face of a mountain.
Yeah.
Mountain biking, send it off a cliff.
Understanding what flow is the first step, and then once you understand what it is and what parameters you need to kind of put it in place, then you start seeking it out and try to get into it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about starting to keep a log of, okay, today I had 47 minutes in flow, and of course it's kind of subjective, but I want to start trying to seek out flow moments more, and I'm already doing that. Definitely. And it's a powerful thing in my opinion. All right, one more, and then I'll let you go, Katie.
So I think it was the last video, but the accelerated learning video, he said, accelerated learning is possible. It's just about finding the right toolkit.
Yes.
And I think that's goes across many different areas and disciplines. That a lot of times we say things are impossible, but it's just because we haven't been exposed to the right toolkit.
Yeah, and that probably fits right into your research. And also, I would say, how do we get that toolkit a lot of times? What's a good way to find that toolkit? Find somebody that's done it before. Right? Don't try to reinvent the wheel. And there's no disgrace in that. In fact, a lot of people will be more than gracious to help you if they've figured out how to do it. And that's what he's doing. Tim Ferriss, I don't know if he comes up with a lot of stuff originally. He gets concepts from a lot of different people, and a lot of times he'll make them better, but he has no problem leveraging what people have done. All right, Gopal, we'll call it a night.
For me, I think the victim versus the comparison that you did between victim and warrior.
Warrior, victim, yeah.
And the first line in it, it goes back to one of the readings that we did a couple of weeks ago that talked about pessimism lets you survive and optimism lets you thrive.
Yes, I love that quote.
That statement just got stuck in my head.
Yes, it should have.
And
I think it was negativism. I don't know if it was pessimism, but yeah. And you understand where that's coming from, right?
Right. And I think after the conversation and after reading that article, I think I'm changing my stance.
Good.
But
you're coming around.
Coming around, yes. I mean, that point actually hit hard. The thriving part, I think, is the one.
And I told you guys probably didn't hear this, but I told Gopal when we had a discussion, I'm a recovering pessimist, so I know. I used to be that way. I used to call it realism. But somebody kind of opened my eyes to the fact that most of the time I was just being negative. And you can kind of sugarcoat that all you want and say, oh, I'm just preparing myself for what's bad's going to happen, whatever. It doesn't serve you. Optimism will serve you much better. And again, like Ryan said, we can't rule out the realistic side of it. The realism has got to be in there. I can't be saying, woohoo, life's great, and then the bus hits me. But you get the point, right? So, good job, Go. You're making progress. All right, good job. I appreciate all the good discussion, as always. I will see you next week. I posted the assignments this afternoon, so you should be ready to rock and roll.
Mario.
Yeah, I know. You're a good practical joke.